Please hit like, share, and subscribe. Now enjoy the Practical Guitarist podcast.
Good evening, Jim.
Good evening, David.
We're going to talk about vintage guitars tonight.
Oh, God.
I really had to stop Jim just now because there's something we should be talking about as part of the what's new. So what's new for you? We both filed our taxes, right?
That's
and
right.
So I'm getting some money back. Jim's paying some money, and life goes on. So
not as much as last year, though. Almost half of what I did last year.
Because I remember you told me what she paid last year, and I was like, how do you even get into that situation? But so tax season sucks, right? But like a lot of people kind of get into this whole like, I'm getting a bunch of money back, and so I'm going to blow all this money.
There was a time, and I do remember this, and this kind of leads into what we're talking about. So I did my son's taxes too while we're sitting here. And there was a time when tax season was fun and you got some money back. And like you, a lot of people they know they're paying extra. They do it on purpose.
I do.
They want that buffer. I need to do that for next year. I've already got everything setting up for next year so I don't pay again. I'm going to try to get it close to zero as possible. The problem is that doesn't really indicate your real income. But anyway, so at the end of a year, I had 3 kids and I had a wife and so I had 5 deductions, and think about how much money I got back.
Those child deductions help.
Yeah. So this is my second year of empty nesting, and so I didn't work at Guitar Center, so all my Guitar Center money didn't go out in taxes. But the little bit, because I worked 1 month last year at Guitar Center still, at $1,100. That's how much I had to pay extra in taxes. So you see my point, right?
Yeah.
And so what's funny is I look at this and I think to myself, who gets a refund? And it's obviously people with kids and everything else. And I used to be that person. I used to say, oh man, I get that refund back. What am I buying? Am I going to buy this? I'm going to buy that, or I'm going to buy an amp, or I'm going to buy a guitar, I'm going to buy pedals. What am I going to buy? And now I'm like, my son, who doesn't do the pay extra thing, he just, whatever they take out, they take out. Well, first of all, Uncle Joe wants $4, okay? Because Joe and Kamala got to split it so they can go to McDonald's and get off the dollar menu, right? And then, so that's how much he's paying in federal. $4. You would think there'd be a minimum.
Look, the tax
processing fee. If $4, it's going to cost money to take the $4 from him. But anyway, that's beside the point. Then he's getting money back from Aunt Virginia to offset that, so he's going to get a total of $48. I'm like, we spent that at lunch. I'm like, and more. I'm like, this is not a great tax season. Now Aunt Virginia is giving me 800 something because I way overpaid Aunt Virginia. So I've just got to, move some money around so that Uncle Joe and Aunt Kamala get more money. Jenny gets less. But I'm just saying that this whole thing, it's like some of us, don't get money, and it's like we're giving everybody I know, every friend I know, and I have, owed money, broke even, or got a little bit back, unless, just like you, they had, you have 2 kids at the house, right?
Right,
and you're able to claim both of them, right?
This year, yeah.
So that's why I was saying that. So when I look at it. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Where I was going with the taxes was that, do you remember when companies used to have the tax sales right around tax day?
Yeah.
They're not doing that so much anymore.
No, because and it was long before Trump even. They started trying to get you to zero. And so more and more companies didn't take out more taxes than you would owe at the end of the year.
Well,
They
that's
kept
based on
trying
that's
zero
based on
down.
the forms you fill out.
Right,
Okay.
right. I
And
know.
and the
I did
and
single and zero.
right, but in the last 8 years, that's been a problem because the tax law changes within the year,
Yep. And
specifically
they
in the
don't.
last 3 years.
Yep.
So you don't know what the hell's happening until you file. Um, and yeah, so that's where I'm at. But I did get some tax sales this weekend. Waves, the company that does plugins. I'm working on a recording project right now. I was able to snag. I think this deal will still be going on Monday, the 18th. I was able to snag 2 plugins for $30 and get 2
Yep.
free.
Wow.
Okay, so they were like, "Yeah, we're just going to give some plugins away," pretty much. Um,
That's great.
and that's the first time I've had a deal like that in a long time. So
Yeah.
none of the stuff I'm buying right now is like sexy gear purchases, right? I'm buying plugins to record. I'm buying a direct box when I get paid this week. Just so not a direct box really, but it's a reamp box. And then
Oh yeah.
I'm buying probably after that like expression pedals, that kind of thing. So I kind of want to share a little bit about that, right? The expression pedal thing. So, actually, you know what? I'm actually going to hit the what's new at the end of the gig report because it's part of the gig report and some things that led to some other things. So,
Yep.
do you have any what's new other than death and taxes?
I literally don't think I bought any. I mean, literally not even a guitar pick.
Yeah.
No.
Hey, that's okay. That's okay. You knew taxes were coming. Everybody holds on to their wallet to that point, and a lot of people actually like even hold up, and they don't really have gigs and stuff going. Today is obviously Easter, so probably not a lot of report in that regard as well. I know you're about to get ready for some other gigs, and stuff, and you've got obviously construction going on in the room too, so that's a whole thing.
Yep.
So anyway, let's go ahead and let's flip over to topic 1 if you're ready.
It's hard to point at that wall.
The blank
That
wall. Blanket.
That wall.
You're pointing at a blank.
Yeah, the Thor picture is gone, folks. That's gone. We threw it in the garbage. And
You said goodbye
which
to
is
Thor?
unfortunate. And said goodbye to Thor.
Why did you throw it in the garbage?
Because it was an 11 or actually a 12-foot canvas poster, 12 foot by almost 6 feet tall canvas
It's like,
poster.
where are you going to hang that up?
Yeah, and nobody wanted it. I was like, I have a futon, and I can't give that damn thing away.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I know about futons.
You can't even give those damn things away. I don't know why. Don't buy a futon. Whatever you do, don't buy a futon.
I did. A long time ago, but it was a long time ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, topic 1. Jim, we talked about this before the show. Just something that's been pondering in my mind over the last couple of days is vintage worth it? Like, so obviously we know, just to kind of set the scene here a little bit, obviously we know that people buy vintage guitars all the time, and they maybe even lust after certain vintage guitars. Like we can think about 61 Strats and 57 Les Pauls, and maybe 57 Strats as well fall into that. No casters and
Definitely
broadcasters.
63, 64 Strats are in there. Anything up to 64 before the takeover of CBS, I think that is.
Well, 61 and 62 tend to be the holy grail. That's like the 57 in the Les Paul. Like a lot of people are very, very, and I think it has to do with SRV, but it's like everybody wants that 61 for some reason.
Yeah, I looked into getting a birth year Strat. So my birth year, folks, is 64, and it was 20. I think a cheap one, like one that is a quote unquote player's grade, is $20,000.
Yeah, so that's the sticker price.
Yeah.
talking to
I'm
people
thinking
around, I know that they trade for about 10,000. But that said,
that's
10,000 is
probably
still
right.
an insane amount of money.
Oh yeah, and I'm not going to spend it on a Stratocaster. I
Hmm.
don't like Stratocasters enough to spend it on a Stratocaster.
Hmm.
And there's no such thing as a 1964 Les Paul. So guess who's not buying a birth gear guitar?
Yeah.
So-
Yeah. And that, by the way, that was player's grade when I was referring to the one that was about 10
right,
grand.
right. I know.
So,
Yeah.
um, but that's, it's worth mentioning. Like, if you're in the market, never buy off reverb for a vintage guitar. Look for one local, or look for one you can drive to see and make a deal in person. Without
Right.
without a doubt, because and also you better know your shit. It's like Joe Bonamassa says the same thing. Like, when you know it's a vintage guitar, you know it's a vintage guitar. And if you have any question of doubt, then you're not buying it, and you shouldn't be.
That's right.
So
But
there's that whole thing too.
so for my year, just to give you an idea, the cheapest one is $24,500. And the most expensive one on Reverb right now.
Hmm.
And the most expensive one that's used excellent, it's in Connecticut. It is $89,000. I couldn't see me spending $8,900 on a Strat.
They'll never get $89,000. I don't care if it's in perfect immaculate condition. Strats aren't worth that. Period.
No.
Period.
And they've got one for 45,000. That's the next high one, but it's in Paris, France.
I could see maybe 35 to 40, but
yeah, there's one at
even
41
45,000 is steep. Okay.
41.5 in Canoga Park, California, and let's see, one in Florida for 48. I just, and that one came from Neil Schoen's collection. I
Yeah.
just don't.
Oh yeah, okay.
And so yeah, that's what I'm
They
saying.
made me put it in a case for 25 years and never touched it.
Yeah, which it probably was.
Yeah.
When you
I'm
think
sure.
about it, it probably was a cased guitar.
Yeah, he plays so many PRS guitars. I just
Oh hell yeah! Oh yeah, this thing. Oh my god!
I'm making
This
a joke.
literally
by the way, but-
is. I know you're joking. Guess what? This does look like it sat in a case from all those years. So I could understand somebody if they're a big Neil Schon fan and it was his. It obviously didn't get a lot of play.
Something like that, it wouldn't shock me if it wasn't a gift.
That's what I was about to say. A gift to Neil Schon, and then he gave it back, and it's like, oh yeah. Yep.
So, all right. That aside, right?
Yep.
I think even guitars from my youth are starting to get the word vintage attached to them. By youth, I mean, the 90s, early to mid 90s. If you're paying attention to the market right now, prices are climbing.
Yep.
And it's being driven by the inflation that's driving the larger market, I think. I think a lot of people are like, well, the larger market prices are going up, so my used gear needs to go up, even though the larger prices are sort of artificially inflated right now.
Yep.
I've been having some kind of economic conversation with people about this and saying look, companies are taking advantage of shortages to raise prices because they can right now. And that's something we all sort of need to reconcile in our minds, that these prices are artificially being raised, not just, and it's not just dealer markup and all that. It's just literally hey, I have to raise my prices 3% to cover the new cost. Let's raise them 7% because this is a good opportunity to do that.
So there's a couple of reasons that things might be moving in Reverb.
Mm-hmm.
So there's Etsy, who's obviously everybody knows Etsy is what Reverb owns. Reverb. Etsy has announced a price increase.
Yeah.
And the last time that happened, it was a little while later. Reverb announced it too. So I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just saying it could happen.
So can I ask a question? Because this is what every one of our listeners should be asking.
Yeah.
Why is Etsy going up? They don't provide. Now, if the shipping cost goes up, you're going to see that in your shipping cost, right? That's going to be reflected there. But why are their sales fees going up? Is it because the cost of living increases for their employees? Or is it because last time I checked, when we had inflation, I've never worked for an employer who's like, oh, cost of living increase. That's not how that works. That's somebody looking at the situation
Yeah.
going, there's more money on the table. Let's grab it.
Unless you're in the military or then work for the government, and then, which I don't because I'm a contractor, so I'm not a direct employee. My raise this year was, let me see, carry the 4, add 5, 0.
Yeah.
So, and my raise last year was, let me see, 0. So, and the raise before that was 0. So I'm just saying
Most
that
common folk don't get raises like that anymore.
most people now, military and government people get what they call a COLA. So again, this is something that those folks that live in there, and don't get me started on that because I live with and work for the government folks who then talk about, oh yeah, I only got a 4.5% raise. Shut up. I didn't get any. So shut up. If you can see it in your check, it's better than I got. So anyway, what I was getting at there is this, so Etsy's looking at going up, and that's exactly what I was like. So what are they providing that they didn't provide last week?
You got it.
For the extra percentage.
Nothing. Do you remember what we remember what they said was going to happen last time? We're going to provide better marketing services for small businesses who also absorb the brunt of everything. Do you know the only thing that changed last year? They 1099K to people. That's what changed. That's right. So we paid for them to screw us.
Yep.
That's kind of messed up.
Yep. And guess what? They'll 1099 everyone next year.
Oh no, they 1099 everyone. No, they 1099 us last year too.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. It didn't matter how much you spent.
I mean, which was a bit of a tax nightmare for me, by the way. I had to fill that out the other night, and I actually bought audit support this year because I have no idea what the hell's going to happen. It was $50 versus paying $1,000. I think I'll take the $50.
You know what pisses me off about that? Seriously, we're not businesses.
No,
you, me, the everyman who sells stuff. Now, let me finish that because there's one more step to that. Not only are we not businesses, they collect the fucking sales tax on that item. So Uncle Sam and
but it is income for us.
It is not.
Yes, it is. You took money in, Jim. That is income for a private citizen. You are supposed to report all income to the federal government. In their eyes, that is how that's supposed to work.
Say that if you and that would be to say, and I'm not saying that is some places do this. You live in a bigger city, they might. If you have a and I can tell you they do this in Norfolk, but they do it differently, and I can tell you about how they do it. But if you go out, let's say I have a yard sale, I put a Les Paul out there, and I sell that Les Paul out there, right? Which used to be the great way of getting instruments when I was a kid. That was one of the great ways.
It still is.
Stop it at a yard sale or whatever. You can still get some cool instruments. Anyway, that means you're supposed to do taxes on that. Yes. What about the little kid with a lemonade stand?
Correct.
My son and I were talking about that.
Yes.
And so, and I know, and I saw the story about the kid that did a lemonade stand and wound up having to pay thousands of dollars in taxes. I'm like, you are kidding me. My point is, we don't sell guitars for a living.
No.
And we don't sell guitars on a regular basis.
And you don't you don't have to pay the self-employment tax, but the way it's coded is misleading.
And 99.9% of the time, what do you do with that money that you just sold the guitar for?
You buy something else with it.
You buy another one.
Or you've already purchased what you had and you didn't buy it to sell it. So therefore,
that's right.
Why am I listing this as a tax item on a 1099K?
Right, exactly.
Which is supposed to be miscellaneous business income.
Now, I get it if you're like a trogly or you're a collector and you're dealing in the $10,000, $40,000 guitars. You're churning guitars all the time. That's your business.
The limit was supposed to be $20,000 up until actually next year it'll flip. I believe it was like $20,000 this year, but they issued 1099Ks because certain states were requiring it.
Right.
Right. Which, if you're like me, you have proof, you wrote it all off, and basically you paid like $35 or something. It was like peanuts.
Right.
Which is what I did because there was a way and just so people who are listening, if you haven't filed your taxes yet when this episode drops, just so you know, you can get away with this if you take your 1099K and you put it in as investment income.
Right.
and set it as was it Prada? It's like personal items,
Right.
and just put in there, and then you can offset with what your cost basis was, and
Right.
I'm sure. I think that cost basis is supposed to be over here, so it ended up being capital gains for me, which is even
Yep.
more screwed up because most of the stuff was not bought
I
last
know
year.
and I had, yeah. So I got one. Obviously, we all did. Um, and luckily, because it was under $600, I actually was under 500 or something like that. But uh, it did nothing when I put it in the tax system. It did not. But I put it in there.
Yeah,
I was like,
you
I'm
have
being
to because
honest.
it's been because
Being
it's
honest.
been reported, right?
Yep.
It's not like a W-2. So 1099s, I think you actually have to send a copy to the feds in order for them to. I
Well,
don't know. No, they get a
they
copy. They
take
do
a
get a copy. They
copy.
do get
They
a
get a
copy.
copy from Reverb, and the only thing you're doing is saying, "Yes, it was
You
me."
acknowledge it, right?
Yeah. I
There
just
are other ways
wonder.
to actually file that. By the way, there's a miscellaneous
Yes.
income
That,
line, and you can offset that as well. But
yeah.
it
I
was
put it
easier to
in
do it.
under. Right, because I have a 1099-R because I'm retired military. So all I did was I just put the damn thing in there, and um, but
In my case, it made more sense to put it in as investment income,
yep,
just because it's a personal item, and I sold it, and I got money
yeah,
back, and I made money on some, I lost money on others, and overall, I lost. So,
yeah. It
um,
said to me how much did it cost and how much did and so I was able to offset it. But I'm just saying that it's for me. I didn't have to do that this time because it was $600, under $600, so it didn't matter. But still, it just now the way that Norfolk does it is if you have to actually get a permit to do a lawn sale. And so if you do more than X number of lawn sales per year, they
mhm.
charge you
Correct, and we do that here too.
taxes to
They
do
do the
those.
permit thing here. Most
Yeah.
municipalities do that now.
Yeah.
Um,
I haven't
actually,
had a lawn sale in decades, so I
well,
don't know.
it's funny. So you bring that up. The $600 actually applies next year. That's a 2023 tax code or 2022
Oh, okay.
tax code. So
Yeah.
2021 was the, I believe, $10,000 or $20,000 amount.
Oh,
But
yeah.
that said, if they've already reported it, your state needs
Right.
to know you'll probably get all
Yep.
that money back. It'll have no effect on your taxes regardless.
Right.
Realistically, you probably should
It's,
still be claiming that, but it's
I
just one
did.
of those things where, like, we don't get. So I'm sure everybody gets income at some point during the year. Somebody hands you
I'm
20
just
bucks, or
but the thing is they charge the sales tax.
right.
That's the thing that kills me.
But
I realize that's separate. I realize that. I'm just saying they charge the sales tax when it's an individual and you're being honest about the sales tax. And you're doing this part. Why is it that you have this arbitrarily very low number? $600 is an extremely low number. You know?
yeah, I mean,
Okay.
listen. I am very, very, very upset that this has happened. But anyway, in terms of is vintage worth it, right? So like,
Yeah.
if you buy and sell vintage guitars, you're getting 1099K from here on out, right?
Yeah.
That's something we're all going to have to be like sort of cognizant about now, is that like every sale I make is going to count against me because I have to be able to offset that with the sales number for bringing an item in.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so even though like, and now granted, when I said that I wrote off my stuff, what I was actually doing was like looking at what I paid for the item before I sold it. So I looked at each item on an individual basis, just like you would
Right.
stocks. So that it would make sense in the grand scheme of things. Like I wasn't combining my Kiesel with my, you know, whatever
Right. Right.
else, right? It was like because that was one of the items I sold last year. With my Mesa cabinet that I sold, like those items, they're
Yep.
separate, and I paid separate prices for them, and so I made some on one and lost some on the other. Um, and so it is what it is, right? At the end of the day, that's it. And so with vintage guitars, like um, if you buy a 70 Strat, like say $5,000, right? Or 10, if they're probably going for 10 now. And you sell it, what do you owe now? Right? So tax is a big liability, right?
Yeah.
The other thing that I wanted to pose a question about is vintage guitars and reliability. Okay.
Well, yeah. So have you ever watched the Doug and Pat show? They're like two old guys.
Um,
One guy has a pipe, and the other one, and
I don't
they
think so.
play mostly vintage equipment.
I
I mean,
don't
we're
think I've ever
talking
watched it.
50s Les Pauls, 50s
Yeah,
Tellys and Strats and everything else, right?
maybe. I think those guys might have been the ones that shot out the 57 Les Paul with the
Yes, with a
with a
Heritage or
Heritage.
something.
Yeah, I
Yep,
have seen them. Okay.
yep, yep. So they did a thing the other day where they read a quote from George Gruen from 1979.
Hmm.
Okay, 1979. So George Gruen was writing for Guitar World, 1979, and what you just said was right out of that 1979 quote. George Gruen was asked about vintage guitars in 1979. And he said back then that the guitars that were becoming collectible was the 1950s guitars.
Sure.
He was talking about the 50s Les Pauls and Strats and Tellys and the 40s, obviously. So this comes to a head when he said that not just like anything else, and of course in 1979 things were really different. Just like everything else, not all those guitars are great. And he goes, do you really want one? You know? And he goes, they're making guitars better now, but the guitars they're making better now, and this is 79, Ibanez, right? That's a baby
Yeah.
company in 1979.
Sure.
You know, companies that don't even exist yet. Schecter, who's still at that point, I think, making parts for Fender, replacement parts, and so on and so forth. And he's saying the exact same thing. He's like, do you really want to buy a guitar that's that old? He goes, you know, there's a collectability, but it's not exactly a, you know, that doesn't mean it's a great guitar. And he was saying the same thing we've said 100 times. It's that just because the guitar exists and was built back then, and the Adams Jones is a great example. A 1979 Les Paul Custom was not a great guitar. It was not a sought after guitar.
Yeah. Well, and so
I know I had one.
So but that becomes part of the problem, right? Well, now we're talking subjective stuff.
Right.
And I want to talk about cool factor a little bit here, right? So
Yep.
I think we all pretty much agree that a vintage guitar is going to be harder to fix, harder to maintain, and probably not as well built as one you would buy just off the shelf today in a lot of ways, because it's just weathered a lot of abuse, right?
And the second you have to refret it, rewind the pickups,
there goes your value.
change,
But
there goes the value.
But the value may not matter to some people that listen to the show, right? Like I understand. If you're buying it to play it, like I understand that, but I'm going to get a couple things out here. So like the cool factor, right? So like people think like, I want to be cool like Stevie Ray Vaughan, and I want to buy a 61, which he wasn't playing a 61 anyway. It was like a 62 with a 61 neck or something. And I want to buy that, you know, that style of guitar. And like people lust after that stuff. And they just get to this point in their life where it's like, I've got enough money and I can buy one. And, you know, as God is my witness, I'm going to do something stupid. And here we go. And it's always the guy in like a bar band, or, you know, like if you've ever run into somebody who collects vintage guitars, it's kind of hilarious who they are, because it's rarely like, you know, player kind of people, like people that are in like the A-list or B-list. I mean, yeah, they have a lot of those guitars, but yeah, you always run into somebody who's like my age, who's got like, you know, a trust fund, and he's using it to buy, you know, 70s Les Pauls, which is like, that's weird. Why would you be doing that? But anyway, yeah. So like, they're like, oh, I'm really into Fenders, and like, I'm going to buy a 61 because it's a guitar I've always wanted. And then they go buy one, and it's got like problems with the neck or something, you know, like it's either twisted and it's like the cool factor, you know, I'm just pointing out, like the cool factor has this guy really excited about this thing that isn't even half as good as what he can buy off the shelf now, because it's more playable, because maybe it sounds better. I don't know. I think that's a totally subjective thing. I think you could probably, for most people, pick something up off the shelf. It may not have that cool factor, and that's a big part of this, right? So like people buy these things because they get it in their head that that's the only way they can do something. And I am guilty of this. I have an Amp 1, and quite frankly, I thought the only way I could do things with big box heads and stuff like that. Like I always kind of felt like I didn't have the right level of tonal quality, and I bought the Amp 1. I'm totally happy with it. I'm like, what the hell? Like this shouldn't even be a thing. But hey, you know, I'm not gonna try to get out of that. Being happy is good. So I guess what I'm getting at here is that people make bad decisions based on how they think something is going to be. And then they end up with it, and like, it might be a good decision, might be a bad decision. If you buy a 61 and the neck is slightly screwed up, right? Like, you could have the neck planed and adjusted so you could get it playable. But if you just spent $20,000 on a 61, well, you're not spent 20, you probably spent 40. If you spent $40,000 on a 61 and the neck is slightly twisted and you have to take it and get it adjusted, you're not going to have that money. But the vast majority of us who are in that boat are going to be like, first off, who the hell do I take it to? Because you don't just take that to your local guy. I'm sorry, that's a like an heirloom investment quality guitar, and you'd have to take that to somebody who knows what they're doing. Maybe even the Fender Custom Shop to get them to fix it. And then on top of that, you're in a situation now where you have this guitar that you spent all this money on that's basically unplayable until you get it fixed. Which means if that's your one guitar, you know, you're kind of screwed. Now, I'm also like of the frame of mind, not every vintage guitar is a 61 Strat too. Like, there are a lot of people that collect old harmonies and stuff, and those are okay. Like, I'm not going to dispute those people, but you guys are in a much different class of cost basis, right? So like, you're buying a $2,000 guitar that guys will work on, you know? And be willing to gut it or do whatever you want to it. And that's a whole other animal. So I know at least of one person who had a vintage Strat. I don't know what year it was, but they were telling me, like, I wanted to get some work done to it and they wouldn't touch it. And it wasn't because like the guitar was in bad shape. It was because they're like, we're not modifying that. Like, that's pristine. It's like, you know, it came out of a time machine. We're not touching that. That's bad for, you know, it's a bad look for us. But it's like, he owns it. Why the hell won't you do what he's asking? I'm kind of like of that frame of mind. It's like, people should do with what they want with guitars, right?
Whatever they want. Exactly.
I'm not a fan of collectors of vintage gear. I think people who collect for collecting's sake kind of suck.
Well,
It's different if you're going to use it. Because I think that those guitars deserve to be in players' hands. I mean, what the hell good is a great sounding 60s Strat if I can't pick it up and play it?
right.
You know? So there's been this whole hedge fund thing where like people are buying guitars and reselling them and driving the prices up, and they might have 50 of the same color Strat because they know that that's the one that they only made a certain amount of and they've got most of them. So they can drive the market up on that particular color. And if you don't think that goes on, it absolutely does go on.
Does. Of course it does. Of course it does. Look at what happened with the with those darn. I mean, they're not even vintage. Those darn PRS Silver Skies. Every freaking time he comes out with a color, the next day it's on Reverb for, you know, double or triple the price.
Right. So
this thing is on sale on Reverb still for more money than I paid for it.
Another thing to note here, so like just talking about the price side of vintage guitars before we kind of move on to the next section. The price side of vintage guitars, like right now, it's going up. And it's not like, for a while it was like sort of staying the same. It was, you know, if you wanted a 57, you were going to pay $150,000 to $200,000. And that was basically what you were going to pay. And it stayed that way for like 5 or 6 years, running into 2021. 2021, so like 2020 was the year that things like started to become scarce, right? And people were buying like, you know, whatever was out. And then they're like, that drove the market, because even now we're still having shortages of being able to get products. And we're talking about stuff from pedals all the way up to guitars, right? And that happened on the vintage market too, because you can see that the prices have gone up. Now granted, what you're seeing on Reverb is a reactionary thing because people are putting their prices higher thinking they're going to get more. Doesn't necessarily mean that that's the case, especially with vintage gear. Like I've said, most of these vintage guys, they ain't buying on Reverb. Okay. I'm just going to put that myth right out the pasture. Those guys know each other. The collectors know each other. They have each other's phone numbers in Rolodexes, and they call each other and talk about what they have, and they know that Charles has got this, and I'm gonna call Chucky up, and I'm gonna make an offer he can't refuse, kind of shit. And that's what goes on all the time. So when you were talking about the $20,000 64 or whatever, I'm like, yeah, that's because, you know,
if you're not in the click yet, that's
right.
your price. Because that's the thing. A Trogley guy, how do you think Trogley, anybody, I'm not talking about you, because I know you know how it happens. How do people think that Trogley makes money on these guitars? He
ain't buying them for what he's selling them. That's for damn sure.
Of course not. He's buying them at dealer prices or
less.
inside inside the circle prices. Makes a little money on the video on top of it. But for the most part, he brings in a guitar. He quote unquote documents it, which I'm shocked and amazed that he does. He bothers doing the playing demo still. I looked at a playing demo from because I just happened to be like, okay, there's got to be a change in this, and so I looked at a playing demo from like 9 years ago, and a playing demo from now. Not only is he using the exact same chords, but it's just as out of tune as it was 9 years ago.
Yeah,
but on the thing 9 years ago, it says out of tune. This is coming to a point. That's because Trogley is not a player. And I don't think he claims to be. He's not out there going, yeah, I was at a gig last weekend or had a gig tonight or whatever.
He just thinks guitars are cool.
Right. He's not like Rick Nielsen, who's like, I don't know how many I have. I mean, he has, I think Nielsen actually is a business guy and he does business dealings. And a Trogley he's one of the few people that can reach out to Rick Nielsen and go, hey, Rick, I've got this guitar.
Yeah.
Or, hey, Joe, I've got this guitar.
Right.
And even in the professional community, there is a limited number of people who aren't pros who those people go to and say, hey, do you have this? Do you have that?
Yeah.
And
so the clicks don't, so like the collector's click, from what I've heard, the collector's click doesn't really interface as much with pro player click as people think they do. Joe Bonamassa is one of the rare examples where the collector's click will actually put guitars in his hands to get him to play them and loan.
That's right.
And that's just to say, well, Joe had this one,
Yeah. This one went on tour with Joe, and here's some pictures of him with it in whether it's Guitar World or something.
Right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, and then it's important to note that like part of that is because of the pedigree of those guitars. In a lot of cases, is already like it's already been played by this guy and this guy and this guy. So now putting it in Joe's hands is just that's one more step up the ladder, right? And for them, that's a way to increase the value of their investment. Right. You'd think that they would be more apt to do that with other players in that sphere, but I think they sort of recognize Joe as being the vintage guy, and so that's a big deal to have his seal of approval. So, that's part of it, right? But like the other thing to note is that the guys that actually do have a bunch of vintage Les Pauls, they're all pretty close knit. So like, I saw. So you watch the Gibson Gear Garage, and like you can see the same guys get mentioned, and there are a small group of people that are supporting them, like Norm, who have access to stuff that you're not going to find easily. And you think Norm has all his fancy guitars laying on that's why they used to go into the back room, and he has stuff in a vault too that's not in the store.
And when you watch those videos he takes, whether it's with Joe Bonamassa or Orianti sitting at the couch, you don't see any like me in the background looking at guitars. He doesn't need me there. And that's, I don't necessarily think that's a private room. I think they just kind of say, okay,
they may be shooting it. They may even be shooting it after hours. You do see people in there,
or
but it's
you
do see people in there, but it's never like really bad.
Right.
So, and I don't know. I haven't been to Norm's, so like some of this is me talking on my ass, to be honest. But like I've heard, there is a vault that he maintains that is not in the store, that has other stuff.
Well, it makes sense because otherwise somebody would know exactly where to steal all his stuff. Like that guy that got his stuff stolen from the.
Well, you'd have to be dumber than a box of rocks to steal from Norm because everybody knows what Norm has. other than the
Yeah,
stuff that's
you
in the
would.
vault.
I'm just saying. Well, none of these people are smart that do the stealing. I mean, come
True.
on.
I mean, yeah, we all know that for the most part, but I think in his case, it would have to be a pretty organized group of individuals
Right,
because,
right. But if
yeah,
but there was a place in Kentucky. What's the famous city? Name of famous city in Kentucky. It was
Louisville,
on the Ohio River. Huh?
Louisville.
Louisville. It's right in Louisville. There was this beautiful guitar shop, and it's like this little place along the river in Louisville, Kentucky. But it's outside of the city. It's in this nice little picturesque place. And I'm like, geez, it says a guitar shop. And we drove past it twice before I found it. That's how like out of the way it is. But when we got inside, they had like a stage and they had a seating room yeah, that's for the VIPs. That's where they shoot their stuff. So and this was shit 6 years ago.
Yeah.
So that goes on.
Oh, sure, sure. Especially if you have extra space. But
Right.
I think most of these stores are space challenged.
Yeah, but the fact is, whether they're space challenged and they're doing it before or after hours or whatever, um, the fact, or a lot of times they'll have these, they know they're there, so they'll do like a meet and greet thing,
Yeah.
and then they'll have people stand behind the ropes,
Right.
and that way the thing gets done. But they know that behind the camera, there's like 40 people waiting to get autographs or whatever. But my point is, it's an inside group that does
Yeah.
a lot of this stuff, and that goes to what we talked about with that guy that owned all those guitars, but he had a storage unit.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it, but I don't get it.
Right, right. Well,
You know what I mean?
people tend to think that like guitars are not a attractive item for theft, which I don't
Right.
understand that part of it because we all
No, they
fear.
are.
If you've ever talked to a guitarist, you know they sort of fear theft to an extent. So
Yeah, I've got a. Well, we'll talk about the gig
some more,
report, but I've got
some
fear
more
of
than
theft
others.
coming up.
Right,
Yeah.
some more than others. So, but you know, be this as may, the whole point is like, is vintage worth it? You need to ask yourself if you're in the market for a
Right.
vintage guitar. A couple questions you need to ask yourself: what am I buying this for?
Right.
I would encourage you to think about the cool factor question, which was something that I suggested. Was like, are you buying it because it's cool, or are you buying it because you know you actually think it sounds good?
Right.
Ask yourself, can I really afford this? Because I have met people who couldn't. Like they're buying, they need a new car and they need to move, but they're buying, a $10,000 Strat. And you're going, what? You should ask yourself, if you can afford it from the perspective of maintenance and taxes and also insurance. We didn't cover insurance here, but basically it's you're going to spend more on insurance, right? It's worth more. Now I'm pretty sure, Jim, you've had some flirtations with vintage stuff, and I know I have too. So I have a segment here called One That Got Away, and I figured we could share a vintage guitar that we had our hands on. If you don't have a vintage one, we could talk about an old one, or we can talk about something else that got away. But I'm going to share mine, which I think I've actually shared on the on the show before, but it's worth bringing up the story. So I was, of all places, I was at Guitar Center in Arlington Heights, Illinois.
Okay.
And I was actually shopping at the time for a more metal style guitar, and they had some good stuff in. I actually wound up buying a Charvel that they had, but I didn't buy it the day I was there. The day that I saw this, which was they had a pair of SGs. Okay. They had it was like I want to say it was like a 63 or a 64. And then they had like a 66.
Okay.
And so one of them was an SG special, and one of them was an SG standard, I want to say. Now, the standard they wanted 6,000 for. Okay. But the special, they only wanted like $2,000 for it. So I figured something about it wasn't original, but it was, it's P90s. And I picked that guitar up. The guitar weighed like nothing. It had to be like 4 pounds. I mean, it was just ridiculous. And I think it's just, SGs when they get older, because there's nothing to them. They're like paper. Like they weigh nothing. And I plugged it into, and I'll never forget this. It was an Engel Fireball that they had sitting there, 50-watt head on top of a 1960A slant with greenbacks. And I know that because I was going to buy the cab and somebody bought it while I was there. So this thing just howled. And I was a fast playing guitar because the neck had been basically worn thin, right? And it had basically no finish on the neck left. Plenty of wear. I mean, this guitar had just been beat to shit. And somebody had moved the strap pin to the upper horn. So not on the front of the upper horn, but the upper horn, so it would balance better. And that was a common mod done back in the day. And the guitar, it appeared to be really old because the screw that was there was rusty and like, so I think it had been moved a long time ago. And it was a great guitar. And I think they wanted $2,000 or $2,500 for it. It was like really inexpensive. And I remember looking at it, and thinking like, this is really not what I'm looking for right now. But man, that's such a great guitar. And I put it back and I decided not to buy it. And I didn't really have the money at the time, but I mean, like when you encounter something, so more on that in a minute. But well, no, I'll share. So when you encounter something like that, you start thinking like, what credit cards do I have? Like how do I make this happen? Because there's something special about that situation. And at the time I was like, no, I'm not going into new debt for this. Like as good as it is, there will always be another one. And I sort of moved on, and I've asked myself ever since, and it's actually the reason that I have money right now is because I'm like, man, I really wish I'd have bought that guitar, and have literally just kicked myself. So now I was actually talking to a friend the other day. So everybody knows on the show, if you remember the Year of No Gear, I talked about apportioning money aside into a stock account for when I went to GearFest to basically acquire gear. So that it was like a high interest yield account, right? Like I could, and I got real good at that over the last couple of years. I make decent amounts of money when I have money invested in the market. So like right now, for example, I have my money in stuff that's low risk. It's not just low risk, but it's like, it's low risk and safe, which means that people are actually investing in that right now, which means I'm actually accruing value right now. Right. It's not 2020 anymore. I can't go buy GameStop and make thousands like I did on that. But I do have.
We want to get Twitter.
Well, and you just end up paying taxes on it anyway. So you just got to kind of remind yourself it's not a tax shelter. No. So right now where I'm at, well, no, believe me, I was paying very, very close attention to what was going on with Elon on Twitter. But I've got my money put in the right place. And so I got some money put away, and I'm kind of thinking like, if I come across that guitar right now, like I'm in a unique position where if I come across the right thing, I don't have to panic. I can just be like, you know what? This one's not getting away this time. So I have my weapon against like Ahab. I'm ready for the next white whale. Like, right, bring it on. Which is unique because I wasn't the last time, and I've actually had it tapped twice. One was that guitar, and one was an acoustic guitar that I have never seen another like it. It was a Taylor Cedar, I think a GS. It wasn't a GS, not a Mini, like the Grand Symphony. And I want to say it was like a GS2 or something. And I have never, and believe me, anybody who knows me, I'm not a big Taylor guy. But that particular one was just phenomenal. And it was hanging at Sam Ash for like $1,700. And I actually had the money, but I was like, I can't do this right now. So I didn't buy it. Right. And when I went back, it was gone. Yep. So I just said, we're not doing that ever again. And I actually maintain this account at a certain level so that I don't have that moment.
Right. Where you look at it and go, that's the one that got away.
I've had a couple of things like my album that I'm doing right now is getting financed out of there. So if I have to buy stuff, I just take, a little bit here and there but I put it back. Right. So I maintain it at a certain level, and that's how I operate now, because I know that at some point, as long as I'm outperforming the market average, I'm going to be able to consistently have the amount of money that, you know, put away the same amount of money that theoretically would match the value of the industry and that whole thing.
Right. Right.
So anyway, what's your one that got away? I know we kind of strayed a bit there, but I thought it was important to share that strategy with listeners.
Are we referring something I own and got away, or something that
well, it could be, but I'm just trying. I was thinking more of like the vintage style of things, like something that got away. Like it could be something you owned. I don't see why that would be a problem.
Yeah, I mean, obviously my '79 Les Paul Custom.
Yeah.
Got away. It would be worth 10 times what I paid for it. Which 1979 to now, that's quite a bit. That beats inflation.
Can we talk about the inflation calculator for a minute and that whole thing? Because I know we talked about that off the show.
Yeah, the CPI. Yeah,
we talked about that off the show, like Gibson and inflation, and like people say, like, well, the current Les Paul standard is the same with inflation. No, it's not. Yeah. It's actually about 400, or I think we said it was between $400 and $600 more than the regular rate of inflation, which is really interesting. I understand that people want to use the inflation calculator and take it at its root value, but what you have to understand about inflation is that inflation in a particular industry makes assumptions about all industries being equal.
Right.
It's not necessarily the case.
It's right. The CPI is based on basic income, and what's your value of the dollar against. That's what I was telling my son the other day or today. I said, you can't look at inflation because
it's a misleading metric.
Right. They're like, well, gas is up by this much, and last I checked, that's not 7.9%. I'm like, no, it's not. It's the overall value of the dollar based on the buying power against, certain other thing, and I don't want to get.
Some things are much more inflated than others.
Right.
Like housing, exactly. Like housing prices right now are up 20%,
hugely
up 20%, which is why I'm like, there's obviously some things that are cheaper that are balancing this out.
That's right.
So,
and some things that just aren't being bought, and so that it's not only not cheaper, it's got no value at all. But anyway, so I said, yeah, and so you would have to have the CPI based on the musical instruments, based on the time frame, based on the mean income of individuals who were purchasing the item at the time, based on the mean income of those people who would purchase the items now, which is a completely different thing. That's a different demographic. You didn't have you didn't have a guitar collector the way you do now. And so in 1957, 1958, when the Les Pauls were coming out, those guitars were not being bought by Trogley.
No.
Or a guy like Trogley.
Actually,
a trust fund kid or whatever he is. It got the money. It's based on that was working musicians who purchased those guitars, whether they were Les Pauls, Fenders, whatever instrument company at the time.
I really think this is an interesting topic. I want to pursue this more. I know that you were talking about your late 70s Les Paul, 79, I believe. But I actually think this is sort of more interesting to explore the inflation side. So the one thing that I think people miss when they hear that CPI number and they compare it to Les Paul standard, at least for a lot of people, they were looking at the price from I think it was the 2017, 2018, where they had the inexpensive one, right? It was like 2000. It was like 2000 flat or like $1,800 Les Paul, and this is why I sort of laugh about it, because back then electric guitars were not popular, right? Like when the Les Paul was out, like it was the most popular electric guitar of its time for up until the late 50s, and then of course things started to break down, and so the Strat actually sort of took over at that time period for a while, and the Telecaster continued to be popular, and then there were other guitars that people were buying and so forth. But really, guitar at that time was like I would say guitar itself was more popular, but the population was much smaller, so there was less demand for it
Yep.
than there is today. But at the same token, demand per size of population, demand for guitars right now has got to be through the floor. I mean, it's compared to like
the roof.
No, opposite. Well, now because 2020, it's a little bit different, right? But like per person in the United States, guitar probably, I would say, is probably less in demand than say like the 1970s, 1980s, where there were literally millions of people in the United States who probably listed their income on their taxes as musicians, because you could be a musician back then and play gigs locally in bars and make enough money to support yourself.
That's right.
That's not something that happens today. That just, I mean, I know a few people, but it's got to be 1% of the number that it used to be. I mean, it's tiny amounts of people. So like that's what I was getting at. So like the amount of people that have the money for that particular instrument did not drive that price up. That's all I'm saying. Like if anything, the demand for it's probably gone down because there's so many people willing to buy an Epiphone and say it's as good as, and maybe that had an effect on the price more than the amount of people, like the actual quantity of people willing to buy one, and in the versus the overall amount of population, right? So per capita. Right?
Yeah. I mean, think about it. There was nobody walking around in 1979 going, this Epiphone is just as good.
Yeah, because there were no Epiphones that were being produced in 1979 that were Gibson-alike. In fact, I don't think Epiphone was even being produced at that time. I think they pulled the plug on them in the late 70s, did they not? And then brought them back in the late 80s?
And brought them back, yeah.
Yeah, because I thought they pulled the plug in like 78 and then brought them back in like 88. You'd have to look. I'm not Googling that.
Looking it up right now, but I'm pretty sure. Because there were a lot of lawsuit guitars. I think it was in a response to the lawsuit guitars, the Ibanez's, which were great guitars, by the way. I mean, Gibson wouldn't have sued them into the floor if it wasn't for the fact that they were great guitars.
Yeah. That's debatable. I mean, they did sue Dean, so.
Yeah, well, Dean, I don't know why they tell Dean, but there's no such thing as a 1979 Les Paul custom or Les Paul at all in Epiphone for that year.
Right.
And they were brought back, like you said, first of all, nobody's running around trying to find a 1982 or 88 or whatever year it was they brought them back. Nobody's running around trying to find that first year Epiphone.
Right.
Unless they want a birth year guitar. Okay, because you were born in what, 85?
I was born in 84.
84, okay. So figure if you were born in 84 and the Epiphone came out, let's say 84. Let's say it did come out in 84. I don't know. Let's say it did. And that might be the only reason you bought a 1984 Epiphone Les Paul or whatever, was because you wanted a birth year one, just so you could hang it on the wall and go, yeah, that's my birth year guitar. You wouldn't be for playing. And this is the thing that exactly goes right to what you were just talking about. So back then, late 70s is when the boom started picking up, just started for collecting, right?
I mean, I wouldn't even know. I don't even know if I would say that.
Literally nobody bought 70s era, Norlin era guitars were not the ones. As a matter of fact, Gruen himself in that interview, and that's what I was going to get at next, is Gruen himself in that interview said the current Gibson Fenders suck. Okay? So he was talking about the right now, which was 1979 and late 70s, Les Pauls and Fenders were bad. And so to then make them, just because Adam Jones had one that he liked and did what he did to it, and it doesn't mean that now you can't get a 79 Les Paul under $10,000 isn't lefty.
I've played several Les Paul customs from the Norlin era that I thought were good guitars. And it's just, that's why I said, like, some of that's all subjective bullshit, right? Like,
that's right.
So you could say, well, yeah, because the guitar's a pancake body and it weighs a ton. It sucks.
Right.
But some other guys like, dude, that's what it's supposed to be like. It plays
some
great.
people want it. Right.
That's
exactly the subjective side of it. the point I'm making is, and it goes back to what you were talking about, the people who are buying now, the right now player. How many YouTube channels and whatever are full of people, and McKnight was talking about this, full of people who just buy a bunch of guitars
Oh yeah,
and don't play most of them. Look at Chogley.
including McKnight himself.
Right, and McKnight admits it, and he's like, if a guitar doesn't get played within a certain amount of time, out the door. And I mean, he went down to one vehicle for that very reason. He was like, look, I don't even use both my vehicles. Sold it. But the point is that you take a guy like Trogley, he could play all of his guitars every day, once a day, and he wouldn't get 5 minutes on either one.
Yeah.
And so I had to laugh when he goes, "Yeah, this is the Stratocaster I take out when I want to play a Strat." I'm like,
and
that thing looks brand new. That thing has not been played.
Yeah, like how long have you never play Strats, do you?
Yeah, you obviously don't play a Stratocaster at all. And the point that I'm making there is, somebody like him, again, I'm not taking away he is not the player guy. He's not Rick Nielsen, who's also a collector. He's not Bonamassa, that's also a collector. He's not that guy that plays for REO Speedwagon, or is it REO or no? Yeah, REO and Styx or whatever. Not Styx, Horner, who is not a player. Who is a player. Chogley is a collector, and that's what he does, and he does it. There's nothing wrong with it. Anybody? Oh, Jim's slamming Chogley. No, I'm just slamming the fact that he doesn't play well. I would probably get somebody else to do my demos for me. But the point that I'm making here is this: that those are the people that are buying these guitars. They're the ones pushing these prices up.
Yes.
And it's because you've got a guy, and this is the thing that I was talking about with Phil McKnight. There will be a person that's comfortable buying 45 Fireflies.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm exaggerating now.
Or
45
Sawtooth.
Probably. Right. Or Sawtooth or whatever.
Sorry,
guitars.
Michael.
The inexpensive guitars. There's also a person who is comfortable buying 18 or 20 Les Pauls. Okay? And some of them are. I knew a guy who had 19 Les Pauls because he was trying to catch up with Rick Nielsen. I'm like, you're never going to catch up with Rick. This guy's a lawyer, and he was a player. I said, you're never going to catch Rick Nielsen. But at that time, that was 2002, 2003, and maybe 2001. But he had 19, vintage Les Pauls, and he played 2 of them regularly. But the thing is that those 2 he played, those were the player's grade, things that he played. We forget that there's a market of people that's out there that just want to say, how many times you've been in a thing where they said, I just bought a brand new Les Paul, and I've already changed out the pickups. 3 months later, they're selling it.
Yeah,
they're dumping it on.
It's because they bought the wrong damn guitar to begin with.
Because they bought a guitar they thought they wanted.
They bought a guitar over the cool factor.
Instead
of buying one that they'd actually use, which is why I've encouraged you to not think about looks and stuff as well.
Right.
Because
again, and I fight that. I have that feeling. I can't.
I understand. I understand, but sometimes you've got to accept that the good-looking guitar isn't what you need.
No.
It's just a tool, right? Like, it's just a tool. And I find myself telling myself that every time I go in guitar stores now. It's just a tool.
Too many times I've looked at a Stratocaster and thought, that's a gorgeous Strat. I'd love to take that. I did that today. Same at the Guitar Center. I'm sitting there, I'm like,
it's so funny when people say that to me, because it's like Strats aren't even known for having like good wood or anything. It's just like color and,
Yeah. It was just this gorgeous color, and I'm like, it's a solid color. It's just a fucking Strat. I have a great Strat. I have a Strat I love. Whether it's great for somebody else, that doesn't matter to me. It's great for me.
Jim, you know what helps? Just don't go to guitar stores.
I need to stay out of there.
Break the cycle.
My son goes to lessons. And so I have to sit there for an hour.
Sit in the car.
That's what I have to start
Listen to some music. Message me.
Yeah. Tell me not to buy this gold top.
No. Jim,
No,
what the
do
hell are
not
you
buy
think?
that gold top.
Jim, what the hell are you thinking? You already own a gold top.
I need this gold top.
No, you don't.
And that's the thing though. But if I was a person who had gold top buying money and I was that stupid, I might buy it. And then I put it away. And then just like those guys, I'm like, yeah, this has been sitting here in a box. It came in 3 months ago and I'm pulling it out now. And I'm like, really? Really?
I'm not a
It's a
fan.
tool. That's like if you get a wrench and you're like, you know what? I got this really cool wrench in the in the mail yesterday. Because it's a tool to me. These guitars get played, and I just don't see it. I mean, I've got one guitar that doesn't get played. It's literally right there, and that's because it's an Ovation 12 string, and it's just so I can remind myself why I don't own another 12.
Yeah, because you're a pain in the ass.
They're a pain in the ass. I don't.
So before we hop off this topic,
Yeah.
did you want to talk about the 79 that got away, or?
Yeah, I mean, I've told the story before. I bought it. I spent a lot of time saving up for it. I did everything I could to save up for it. I bought it, and my mother sold it.
When you went into the Navy.
Yeah. Now I'm sure that there's her story, my story, and the one in between.
Yeah.
But I'm sure my story is a little more close to what actually happened. But I went in the Navy. She was giving my room to my brothers. She sold everything that wasn't mine. She even got rid of my Star Wars sheets. I mean, gave them to Goodwill or something. So I don't even have my old Star Wars sheets. And it's funny the stuff she did keep. Hey, you used to love this. Do you still want? I'm like, you didn't save my Les Paul, but you saved those.
Yeah, you threw away my priceless Star Wars sheets.
I just bought a shirt. This is a true story. I didn't buy it. My daughter bought it for me for my birthday this year because my birthday's coming up next month. I saw this shirt on Facebook ads, and you know how I share these stupid ads all the time. But it was an ad for a shirt that had those sheets. It was used. It literally was the Star Wars sheets. It was the exact pattern.
Yeah, yeah.
And I said, I want that. It was $70 for a button-up short sleeve shirt. $70. She bought it for me because to get my sheets back. Imagine, the Les Paul. Here's the thing about the one that got away. So just about, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I was in a store. I don't remember which one, and I saw a Gibson Les Paul Custom Black from 1979, and I was like, "Do I buy it? Do I buy it?" And that at that time it was only probably $3,500.
So like I don't think. I mean, if you run across something like that and you really want it, buy it, but then sell one of the other ones.
Right.
Like hold yourself accountable. And it's not because you need the money, but because I don't need this other one. And
right.
All right. Real talk before we move on. See pedals back here on the shelf. There are pedals up here on the shelf above that are actually going to move. That shelf is going to move over here, and you won't see it on the show anymore. And I have pedals on 2 pedal boards. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I have too many damn pedals. And I've been coming to terms with the fact that like I built that big ass MIDI board and I was all excited about it. You know what I haven't used? Big ass
MIDI board.
And I am probably going to make some changes. Some things are going to get sold. Which I told myself, we're not going to start selling pedals again, because when we did that, like that just gave us an avenue to buy and sell. But I've told myself, if I'm going to do anything, I have to commit to what I'm doing before I do it. Right. And so it's what I'm doing, right? I'm working on that right now. But like the whole thought process there is like, when you start, like a lot of people do it the right way. The right way is, I need an overdrive. So they go and they look at a bunch of overdrives. They pick the one that works for them. And then if another one comes along that's better than the overdrive they have, they sell the one to get the other one. and they have like slots that they think about that they're going to use on their board. And this is what I've tried to get into, but I keep killing myself, partially because I run a guitar podcast, which has me thinking about gear all the time when I shouldn't be. This podcast has bankrupted me. Let's be real. I've spent a lot of freaking money that I would not normally spend if it wasn't for this guitar podcast.
I can point to these two right here.
Yeah. I mean, that's a big part of it, right? So like, if we all had that mentality, like we had slots in our lineup, like Jim, for you, I could say, I got one Les Paul and I need a backup Les Paul, right? And then like I have...
It's really all I need.
Right. And then I have like a Strat and maybe a spot for a Tele and maybe, you know, an acoustic and a backup acoustic. Like I could see that because I even think the Strat and the Tele are like kind of... They sit in the same territory. I know they're not the same thing. I want to make that very clear to people, but they sit in the same territory. So it's easy to be like, I got slots. I'll just get the best one I can get of each one. And if I find one better, then I got to swap one of the other two. And if you approach it that way, you're never going to be so super over invested in what you're doing.
Can we add a little something after we move on from this topic? Can we add something in there? Because I want to talk about that whole slot thing.
Yeah, sure. No, we can do that right now.
All right. So here's the thing about the slots, right? I've got 4 Les Pauls hanging behind me. There's one.
Bonus segment.
2, 3, 4. Right. Bonus. This is the bonus segment. There's the Telecaster. There's my Stratocaster. And there's my PRS Silver Sky, which is also a Stratocaster. So I have a Stratocaster and a backup Stratocaster. That's the truth. I mean, that's what they are. Okay. Do I really need 4 Les Pauls? Absolutely not. Which one do I get rid of? I don't know. Because I love all 4 of them. And that is difficult for me. Because I should sell 2 of them.
No, listen, nobody's telling you what to do.
No,
it's starting to look
not
nuts.
Have to. Not right. Jim, nobody's telling you shouldn't have 400 pairs of shoes, but just in case. Or what you don't see is the hundreds of Funko Pops in my house.
I'm just saying it should be harder for you to bring another one into the fold at this point.
That's absolutely correct. I don't want to bring one of them.
Thinking about space, thinking about all the different things that are a part of that.
But I've been thinking about buying what you just talked about, a backup acoustic, because I can't stand the thought of bringing my Hummingbird to a gig at the beach. It boggles the mind, right? So I thought, okay, I love playing it, but it doesn't get a lot of gigging time because I don't like taking it out for 2 reasons. One, an acoustic's easier to break than an electric. We could talk about how Trigger became Trigger for Willie Nelson, right?
Right.
And 2, and more importantly, that's a prize guitar for me. That's the one that would have got away if I let it get away, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm looking at a Mini Koa E. Mini E Koa, the Taylor. And the only reason I'm looking at the Koa is because the Koa has a nice even output of tones.
The Koa is the best of the lineup because they have the mahogany, the Koa, and the
spruce or
the
whatever.
Spruce and the Sitka spruce is too bright, and the mahogany is too dark.
Too dark. Yep.
But
that Koa that's the Goldilocks
right in the middle. And actually, quite frankly, if you're going to plug it in, those guitars are fantastic, except for the scale length can be a challenge for a lot of people because it's like 23. It's like 23.75 or something.
Right. Right. Ridiculously short. But if you're going to do what I do on an acoustic, I'm not.
Yeah, you're chording. I mean,
I'm chording. Even if it's just bar chords, I'm chording. And so I'm like, you know what? Could do that. But it's $1,000. Now, here's one that got away.
Are they $1,000 now?
Well, for the one I want, it's $899 for the one that's not a plus top, and it's $1,099 for the plus top.
You don't need the plus top.
I don't need the plus top. No. I was saying, I don't need the plus top, which means it's $899. But the same exact guitar, that's another one that got away, and it goes to what we've talked about already, which is pricing. Same exact guitar was $600 or $650 2 years ago.
Not even 2 years ago.
And if I go on Reverb right now and I look for a Mini Koa E,
it's $699.
Because it's got to be It's $6.99 for used.
Yeah. I mean, I think there are better values out there for that. Just go get yourself a Siegel S6. They're like the basic guitar. I mean, it's just here's an acoustic with a cutaway, right? Like that's an S6, and
Yep.
it will knock your socks off when you play it like long enough. It'll start to open up, and you'll be like, "Oh my god, this is like a Martin." It's like a good Martin, right? Not like a Stratobond Martin, plywood Martin.
Right.
But like that's my point. Is like I don't even know that I would do that for a beater acoustic. Like I would just go buy a Siegel S6 or something, or even like a Breedlove Concert or something like that. That's just inexpensive. I would buy satin just because those tend to wear better finish wise, because they breathe better. And then you beat those guitars within an inch of their life, and if it breaks, it breaks. You buy another one. Especially for beach gigs. I mean, holy shit. I wouldn't be taking a hummingbird to a beach gig either. Quite frankly, I don't think I'd want a hummingbird in the environment you're in, because you're kind of in like a swampy area. So
yeah, it doesn't go outdoors much.
Yeah,
I'll just tell you that it sits in a house. And the truth of the matter is, it's one of those guitars. If I sold it, would I miss it?
Probably.
And yeah, and so there's no point in me, because I've thought many times about just selling it, and then getting an acoustic that I could, again, the Koa, this is the thing that probably a lot of people are like, you're looking at $1,000 guitar you would take to the beach? Yeah, I am. So
quality acoustics are not cheap. And
yeah, the Koa would be the one that I would be okay taking it anywhere, playing it, having it at my buddy's house. Because when I go to my friend's house in the summertime, oh my God, it's so hot and sweaty and muggy, and I stay there for a whole day. And what does that do to... And so I just...
Well, I mean, I get it. Like, that totally makes sense to me. And that's one of the things where, like, if you're going to buy something, I'd be looking at something that's like a hole in your lineup that you need to fill, rather than something that's like, oh, here, now I get to make another choice about what guitar to bring to the gig.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's that, right? Are we ready to
talk? It's
not
even like I have the excuse of having different tunings.
No, I was just going to say, you don't even really... Like, I have different tunings, which is why I'm still acquiring shit, which not making things easier. Actually, the next guitar is a hardtail, and so that's so I can swap tunings on it.
Right.
So, are we ready to talk about Digitech?
Yep.
Okay, Digitech.
I'll
kind of get us into this, I guess. I mean, I know this is your topic, Jim, but I know what's going on a little bit.
Go ahead.
And I actually reached out to some retailers on this. So Harman Audio, who is actually a subsidiary of Samsung now, I believe. They own JBL. They own a couple other companies in the pro audio side of the industry. I think they also own like Pioneer or somebody like that. You'd have to go look at the Harman family brands. But Harman Audio acquired Digitech, and I think it was like 2017. Or they didn't acquire them; they've always owned them. But they were acquired by Samsung in like 2017, and one of the first things Samsung did was laid off the design team for Digitech, which also meant DoD. Okay, because they're the same company. And so here's where things get dicey, right? So like Digitech and DoD had just gone through this like renaissance of pedals, right? So they were just fresh off the hardware series, and then they did I think there was like a hardware like an end of life hardware series, and then they made they went from hardware, which was supposed to be like their boss competitor, to because they were always seen as sort of like sub boss, right? And then they went over and they started doing their more highline pedals like the Polar Reverb, and they did the Cab VR, I think was one of the options in that line of stuff. There was a Ventura Vibe, couple of different pedals, right? And those pedals were actually supposed to be really, really good. Now, personally, I shot a couple of them out against some different Boss pedals that were coming out around the time, and I still thought the Boss stuff was superior. Those were supposed to be more boutique aimed, like this is to compete with boutique market kind of stuff, because you can even tell from the graphics, like they were really taking a hard look at what people in the market space were doing. Now, DoD at that time also received like a rebirth, and a lot of the old DoD pedals were reissued.
Yep.
And we saw new stuff too, like the Carcosa Fuzz, and we saw the Rubberneck analog delay come out, which was a lot of people like that thing.
Yep.
So all this is going on. They get acquired in 2017. They lay off all of the design staff, and then they basically like cancel a bunch of the line. Although they do it officially, what they do is they wait until they sell out remaining stock, and then they just don't fulfill those orders anymore. And that's sort of been their MO for a while. And they continue to produce the Whammy products. In fact, they brought out a new Whammy product, which was pretty wild. The Drop had already been out, and I think they came out with the Ricochet post-transition. And those pedals continue to sell, and like everybody's like, well, Whammy has always been a big seller for Digitech. Like,
Yep.
maybe they're just going to leave it alone. Maybe the WH5 is the last one, and they're going to continue to produce it ad infinitum. So here's where things get interesting. Over the last couple of weeks, apparently people have been getting canceled orders through Digitech Direct of WH products. And I think everybody was sort of like kind of knowing that eventually Digitech was going to dry up, but it hadn't happened yet. And now people are wondering. And Ryan Bruce Fluff, right? He was one of the guys at Rift Beards and Gears, this YouTube channel. He was one of the guys that like kind of went, hey guys, DoD is probably out of business, or Digitech is probably completely out of business at this point. I have heard rumors on the gear page that Digitech was acquired, that they will not be closing their doors, but that right now things are in transition, so they don't know where that's going to go. I have not heard any credible evidence to suggest that that is actually what has happened. No one has said who has acquired them, and that is the big problem, right? Like if Gibson came out and said they bought Digitech, which would be, in my mind, that's the likely candidate for somebody who's been acquiring companies in the field. They've got a line of pedals right now, right? And Digitech is up for sale, and maybe this whole thing has been negotiated alongside the launch of their new pedals, and maybe Digitech actually, the new designers for Gibson will also be the designers for Digitech, kind of shenanigans, and they could bring them into the family of brands. And
Digitech people are going to work for Gibson.
Well, I don't think there would be any people, because I don't think there really anybody actually working at Digitech anymore, other than distribution. And
I thought they said that the
service.
engineers were laid off.
Long time ago, 2017.
Yeah.
Back in 2017.
They've been laid off that long?
Yeah, they've been gone. The guy, in fact, the main guy is like their lead designer, builds fuzz pedals now. He's got his own line of fuzz pedals. I forget his name is offhand, but so I reached out to some retailers because I'm like, all right, I'm in love with you. Whammy is one of my favorite effects of all time. I had a WH4 for a number of years, and I bought it when I couldn't afford it. Okay. And I kept that pedal for a number of years, despite the things I didn't like about it, which is like tone suck. And at the time I didn't have enough money. Like this is how stupid it was. I bought the Whammy, but I didn't have enough money to buy the true bypass loop switcher you need to use with it so that it doesn't like just completely mangle your sound going through it. So I had it when it was just stupid for me to have it. And I ended up selling it, I think, in the Great Purge of like 2016, when I sold pretty much every pedal I had, and then started fresh. And at that time, I really wasn't even like, they were not even on my radar, right? So it's like WH5 was out, I think. And I remember seeing so they have the WH5, and then they have like the WH5 XL or whatever, which is like the big one. I forget what the product name on that is, not an XL, but it's like, I mean, it's the size of a pedal board. Let's be real. It's huge. It's about a foot wide, about a foot wide and a foot tall. And I remember when that pedal, I saw it the first time and I went, it's a Whammy DT is what it is. I was at Good Time Music, and I asked the proprietor, who's Pat. I asked him, I was like, is that any good? Like, how the hell are they still producing these things? And he told me, he's like, the 5 is really good. He said they fixed all the problems with it. And I kept it in the back of my mind, right? So fast forward, you bought a drop, I think, at one point. You had the Ricochet for a couple of hours.
Yeah, that thing
and
was terrible.
and like so I always sort
I
of
guess
like knew I was going to end up buying one, especially after 2017 when they canned Digitech. But I was like, oh, there'll be time for it later. There'll be time for later. Because I wanted the 5 really, really bad. And so then I get this YouTube thing popping up with Brian Bruce talking about, and this is the second time this has happened, by the way, the Digitech is going under permanently. I went to Sweetwater directly while the video was playing and bought a WH5 just to see if I'd get one. Just to see if I'd get one.
Did you get it?
It is, my order's still placed. I spoke with my rep, and he says that
because last I checked, they were out of Digitech. Everything
they are out, but he says they're still expecting stock. And he said, we have heard nothing about them closing the doors.
Okay, so I have another source. Go ahead.
One first retailer. Talked to another retailer who's also a Digitech dealer. Haven't heard a word. And this is like as recent as yesterday. And these people are actively asking because they're trying to find out, because they may actually be sitting on stock, like, or waiting on product. And they're like, we don't know. We're hearing the same things you are, and there's no answers being given to anyone. So I don't know what your sources are telling you, but that seems to be the general consensus.
Yep. My source, who reached out to their, you probably know who it is, who reached out to their Digitech rep. Well, person that would get it.
Right.
For them. They're not getting anything. They're expecting stock. There isn't anything to give. I reached out, just like you, to Sweetwater. It says more on the way.
Yeah.
It's not on the way.
Okay. Well, so, I mean, if that happens, then I'll be the first to report it, because mine's going to get canceled. But
I can tell you where you can get it. There is a company that okay, Toman also said, oh, we've got some coming. Toman says we've got them coming. Guitar Center said we've got them coming. Another company said they got them coming. Sweetwater says we got them coming.
I suspect there isn't a forthcoming announcement.
Yeah.
And I think that it may be hinging on a sale, which is why they can't really say that they've got any product coming.
Right, because there isn't anything in the line to give.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Now, there is a company in England that has some Digitech products on hand. It's called Gear for Music.
Yeah, and that's co.uk or whatever. Yeah.
They do have 20 plus in stock.
Which means they got the last ones.
Yep. And my co-guitarist and I from Fitch & Company both ordered a Digitech drop, and we both got approved, and we both got it on the way from England. Okay. Supposed to get here this week, Monday, I think.
So what is what is that website? I'm gonna see if I can get one.
It's Gear for Music. Gear number 4 music. Let me give you the.
Yeah.
I'll just send it to you.
Is it .uk or .com?
.com, USEN. So even though they're in, I thought, oh, they're in America.
Oh, they have it. So they have a US.
They have a US
site.
Distribution or whatever. Yeah, or site. So this is right to the pedal, and they've got 20 plus in stock, and they are actually shipping orders. So he got shipping information and everything.
They got, these prices.
Yeah,
I think they got the final stock.
Because guess what? Those prices are lower than what you would pay through, even with VAT, because VAT is included in that price, by the way. Value added tax. But you do pay a little more in shipping, because it's not free shipping, obviously, from London, England, or whatever they are in London.
Yeah, it's not terrible.
We tried to call them, but Then we realized they were UK because I was like, "Why aren't they
Yeah,
answering the phone?" I'm like, "Oh shit," because they're in
because
the
it's like
UK.
2 o'clock in the morning.
Because it was my time. It was like 5 p.m. or whatever, and it's like
It's like
11
11
or
o'clock
whatever.
at night. Yeah.
Yeah, they're not answering the phone. So got a hold of them. Uh, I bought. Now, what's funny is when I bought my check out the price on the drop. When I bought my drop, it was $119. Check out the price right now, and that was just last week.
That is wild. That is wild.
Yep.
I'm doing this right on the show right now.
Yep.
Like,
I bought it right away. We bought it right away. So I paid what the price on the drop is right now. That's what I paid for with shipping and everything included. Um,
I
and
cannot believe I'm buying this
you
for
will
what
get
I'm
that. You will
buying.
get it. That's the funny part. You will
Oh,
get
wait a
it
minute. Wait
by.
a minute. There's a problem.
Uh-oh.
Power plug.
Oh.
So
Oh.
it's a 24 volt, 240 volt version. Let me look at this for a second. I'm gonna let's keep recording. This is interesting. This is interesting podcasting right here. We're buying a pedal right live on
Oh yeah, that's right.
um
Because they're in London.
uh
They should still have the converter on it. They show the converter
well,
on
it's
the
not AC, right? So it's still going to be 9 volt
PC.
or
It's
12
still
volt
9 volt.
DC, so it doesn't make a difference. It's just the power supply
No.
is not going to work,
Right.
right?
So you're just going to have to use a different 9 volt adapter.
Well, you know what? And the funny thing about that is Digitech doesn't they usually ship adapters in the box.
Yep.
So I don't know that this is even an issue for me.
Not for me.
2.4.
The order may contain a 240 UK volt,
Yeah.
which means that you're going to have to get your own 9 volt adapter.
I'm not worried. I'm not worried about that because I have I don't know a power
It's
supply
going on
anyway.
my
I
pedal
got
board.
power supplies
Yeah.
anyway. So
Yeah, it's
that's
going on
not
my
even an
pedal
issue
board. I
for
don't give
me.
a shit. That'll pull 300, probably 500. No, 300 milli.
It'll probably be
Yeah.
300 milliamp. I mean, it's not going to be bad.
No, but still, it's funny that they have them in stock, and you will get it. It says right on there, you'll get it by the 20th to the 22nd.
Yeah, I believe
You'll
it.
probably wait a couple more days because it's got to come through customs. But last thing I got from England, as a matter of fact, my son just ordered something. Only took him 3 days. It took him less time to get something. I got something from.
Done. It's on its way. I've got a wham.
There you go.
I just bought a whammy
There you go.
5.
There you go.
Wasn't expecting to do that tonight.
Yeah.
I didn't even think to go and like look and see if I could, because I figured if they were out at Sweetwater, they're out everywhere.
And Toman goes, yeah, order from us, and then we're backwards.
Yeah, I had the same problem with Toman with the tape Echo, and when I called Sweetwater, they had them. If you remember that whole fiasco when T-Rex went out of business, right? Which I'm wondering if T-Rex is still around. I know
I can tell you
some of their stuff is still out there.
I ordered my pedal last week. It'll be here Monday, and it was the middle of last week. I could tell you what day because they've got a text.
So the T-Rex replicator is still available. You can still get the tape delay. They did not.
And what was cool is because there was 2 of us buying it. He ordered it. Here it is. He ordered it, and because it was 2 of us, we got the shipping was the same for 2 of them as it was for 1. So we shared the shipping cost.
Yeah, so I'm gonna. This is like not what I was expecting to have happen tonight, but if they're literally that hard to find, I mean, if you've got one on order, like if you can get one right now, and you're thinking you're curious, buy one because chances are you're gonna be able to throw this thing up on Reverb in a couple of weeks for like $500. Because these things are going to go up in price. So if you don't know, everybody has used the whammy. Steve Vai, David Gilmour. He's the guy that, like, for me, like, but Tom Morello, I mean, that guy can't play without a whammy pedal. So, like, what the hell is he going to do? Is he just going to buy up all the used ones? I mean, and that's where I'm like, yeah, if you want one, you better buy it now. And they were the only company that did it. Now, so the funny thing is the highly sought after one was the WH1, and they lost the source code to it. So over time, you can't replicate it anymore. You lose a source code on a digital pedal, you're screwed. And not only that, but the platform it runs on is,
that's crazy.
Yeah, it's like deprecated now, so they can't even like. Basically, the new version of the WH5 just does the same thing, and they emulated it, just kind of like trying to figure out how the original worked, and they did a really good job, because the 4 is good, but the 4 doesn't sound like the 1 did. And I know a lot of people were substituting the 4 in place of the 1, especially pros. But the 5 is actually really, really good, and I feel comfortable saying that I don't need a 1 if I have the 5. And I think a lot of people felt that way. So I'm kind of shocked that Digitech is drying up. I mean, I don't know if they're actually done for or what. Nobody does yet at this point, but they are telling people they're not shipping, according to Jim and his sources, who I know who your source is. So he's credible. They're
waiting to find out. This was a quote from his source. The acquisition by a guitar company.
That's what I figure. I mean, I don't know who would be acquiring them other than Gibson. So it could be Fender.
It's either
Fender.
That's exactly what I was thinking. It's either Gibson or Fender, but I was thinking it could be Ibanez.
Yeah. I mean, Ibanez doesn't really have much of a pedal business anymore, because they like divorced themselves from Maxon. Yep. Although Maxon sort of ended their U.S. distribution, which made me wonder if they were going back over to Ibanez. So I don't know. There's a lot of things that could be happening here. This is going to be a real weird pedal landscape for big companies very soon if they get acquired. I don't think they're going to go under. I do think you're going to see a new product line. I don't know if the Whammy will be included in that.
That's got to be. That's the flagship.
Well, here's the problem, Jim. They've been on the WH5 for how many years now? And whatever new product they come out with may be on a new platform, because they lost all the old engineers. Yeah. I mean, it's one of those kind of situations where it could be a totally new product. I've also heard rumblings, and you heard it here first, folks, that Line 6 may be acquiring them.
That's a possibility, and that makes sense.
Would make a lot of sense because of the product parity. But I think that's bad news for DoD if that's the case, because they're not going to be interested in reproducing the old analog DoD stuff.
And it's funny because the Digitech Whammy 5 right now on Reverb, there's exactly 2. Damn. And they're more money than what you just paid, even with shipping.
Oh, I know. I know what I just paid, and I'm like, I never thought I was going to pay that little.
Yep. One's in Milano, Italy. The other one's in Virginia.
It's wild.
I just find that.
Well, you know what happened, right? Like, there was probably a dozen of them a couple days ago, and then this news breaks, and everybody's like, I got to have one.
Just like the tube shortage.
Because they were just like me. They were like, that's something I'd always just thought I would be able to go get,
Yeah. Now, I'll be honest with you. So we were already going to buy a Digitech drop, and I was like, yeah, we'll just get it. And then, boom. They're dropping it. $270 for a Digitech drop. Right now, the cheapest one is from Belgium, $158. There's one in the barn.
The only other option is the EHX Pitchfork.
Yeah.
I mean, and I personally, all right. So I'm going to get real here. We're talking about Digitech. Digitech was a company I ignored for a long time. I had a Supernatural reverb. I liked that. And then I had the Whammy before that. I had some DoD stuff. I think somebody gave me an FX55 distortion, and I had, that was a gift. Somebody gave that to me. And then I also had the YJM 250, which was a DoD 250 alike, which was not anything like a DoD 250 really. And then I had, so that was what I had, right? So like, that was all Digitech stuff I ever owned. I tried a bunch of pedals. Like I tried the Hot Rod Distortion at one point. And I've, borrowed and played a bunch of their stuff over the years, but I was never all that excited about DoD. or Digitech. And so it was kind of weird, like this pedal company's going under and like not realizing that so many people had like a huge love for this company.
Yeah. Well, if you think about it, David Gilmour probably kept the whammy going almost single-handedly for a while.
I think him and Tom Morello specifically. Those
Yep,
Audio
Tom
Slave
Morello. That's the one.
records.
That's the other one I couldn't think of him. Tom Morello.
Yeah.
Yep. Because they both have those wacky sounds that they make with those pedals, and you can't really do with anything else. The truth of the matter is,
you got the Bigsby. I mean, that's supposed to be able to do similar stuff.
it actually does. The thing is that momentarily I can do it with the Bixby. That's not a problem. I actually have it tuned to do exactly what I want it to do. The problem is
it's auto
if I want to do a whole song, right? If I want to do a whole song that way, I need a brick so I can put the brick on the pedal.
It's auto.
Take a brick off.
Yeah, it's auto return. So
Yeah.
like, it's not really meant. And actually, I don't even think the whammy is really necessarily meant for adjusting tuning.
No, you can, but
you can, right? Exactly. So you can.
It's literally got it's got the Digitech drop built in, and then some. I mean, it's much better pedal.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, you're getting it for less than you would buy it, even if you waited till Sweetwater got one in stock. That's what you're going to pay, so you're fine, and that. So it's not a big deal. The problem we're both going to have, and this is the thing that no matter who buys them right now, who's going to take care of them if they break?
Yeah, I mean, so it is digital apparatus. They do have mechanical moving parts. I believe they're optical. So as long as you can get photoresistors, and you can get you can get an LED, I think you can keep them working. They do have calibration functionality. At least the WH4 did.
The WH5 does too.
Yeah, so I'm sure. I mean, they're built to last. These are tour grade pieces of kit, and they were so like, just to give you an idea, they were $292.
Yeah,
$269. So I paid $292 to Sweetwater. Well, I was going to pay $292 to Sweetwater.
Yeah, you're only going to pay $260.
I
probably
paid $224 shipped.
Just now?
Yeah.
Yeah. See?
For a pedal that has not been sub 250 in a decade.
Yep. And that's because you're getting the last of the line.
Yeah. I mean, that's wild.
That is the only company when I started looking for it, because he was like, yeah, I need something that we can do that so that we don't have to tune our guitars down. So he was like, yeah, because I don't want to have to tune a Strat down, I have to step down and one of it. And I was like, oh, that's a pain in the ass. Anyway, I tried to I was like, we'll just get a drop. And I was like, it'll be nothing. I know that what was going on. I knew what was going on. And then I saw that goddamn video, and I go to type it in. I go, oh my God, they're out of stock. Okay, you're out of stock, Sweetwater. I'll check Guitar Center. Out of stock, Guitar Center. Called Robert Jackson.
Yeah, and then started to get info about like things not being around.
That's when it started.
And
then I tried Toman. Then I tried another one. I'm like, oh great. And I was like, every little freaking nook and cranny, like my local shops and CME, everybody.
They've been out of stock for a while. It was like, just that I think the big red flag was when they started canceling direct orders. It's like, that means they don't have any stock, period. And they're not expecting to get any. So here's a fun one, right? So if you want to talk about shortages and stuff, and if you want to blame this on a shortage, because I think it's pretty clear at this point, this is not a shortage issue so much as they're just not going to do them anymore. If you want to talk about, actually, maybe an interesting angle here. Let's do this first. What's a DoD product you'd like to see them bring back, or a Digitech product that you'd like to see them bring back if they move over to another company, which I would say is probably 80% likely is going to happen at this point, because there's a lot of intellectual property there, the whammy specifically, that a lot of companies would like to own. Do you have anything other than the whammy? Because everybody wants to see the whammy come back, right? Like, that's not going to be something that's going to disappear. Sure. But is there anything else you'd be interested in?
That would come back?
Yeah.
You know, I wish that somebody would actually take that Klon and bring it back just to drive the prices of those damn things down.
Oh no,
The
no, I meant a
hilarity.
Digitech pedal, like a Digitech DoD, because I
Oh,
don't know if you
oh,
had any
oh.
soft spot for them or
Yeah, I had what was it was a DoD pedal, same company, right?
yeah,
Um, was the DoD uh it was a drive pedal. I'm trying to
the
remember what.
250.
That's it.
Yeah, a
The
lot of people would like
DoD
to see.
250.
A lot of people would like to see the DoD in its original gray box form. I'd like to see the original DoD 250 come back, like original chipset, all that stuff.
Yep.
I'd like to see that one come back. I don't know that I'd necessarily buy that one. You know what? I actually would like to see them do the which they won't because they will not be affiliated with Lexicon anymore.
Right.
I would like to see the Supernatural come back. The
Oh,
Supernatural Reverb had the Lexicon. They used proprietary Lexicon algorithms in it, and that was a pretty cool box. I mean, it was more on the ambient side of things, but it had the worst shimmer in it. But it was, I don't personally need one, but I think for a lot of people, like that's the ticket, and they could bring that back cheap because it's based on old digital hardware, right? Um,
yep.
I'd like to see a lot of the DoD stuff come back because when I was a kid, that was what you bought, right? Like when you
Oh
bought,
yeah.
oh, I need a distortion pedal. You know what you bought?
Yep.
The DoD death metal.
Death metal.
Yeah,
Yep.
or the grunge, which was actually, I think, the same pedal, with like minor tweaks, and like they were all both based on a rat, I think, but they were like rats modded within an inch of their life kind of designs. And Josh Scott can talk more about that because I know he's done a whole DoD thing. So if you haven't seen that video, go watch his DoD retrospective where he talks about like basically here's all the designs the DoD ever put out, and there's something like
Yep.
there's some meat machine or something. There's some like meat cleaver fuzz or something like that, and that's hysterical because they made these graphical pedals where the graphics were like the feature of the pedal. The pedals like are not universally that great, but the artwork and stuff was hilarious. And the pedals themselves were cheap, so like the DoD
Well,
line was like $50 a pedal or like 40
oh
bucks a
yeah.
pedal. I mean, even at that time, that was like unheard of.
But
Um,
think about some of the best DoD pedals that were out there. The grunge, right? That was a
oh,
very
it was
popular.
popular, but it's
It
shit
wasn't
pedal,
good,
really bad. It was really bad. That's one of the worst pedals
and it
ever.
definitely didn't sound grunge.
Yeah. So apparently that was supposed to be like their Kurt Cobain signature pedal. Like they were
Yep.
trying to. That's what I've heard is like they were trying to get him to endorse it, and like
Yep.
he would use it at shows and throw it to people in the or throw it at people in the audience and stuff because it was like a
Yep.
piece of shit.
Yep.
Which he was a boss guy. Like he was a big fan of the DS1. Do you know what I don't want to see Digitech do? Stop the fucking modelers. Like Digitech was not known for the RP series modelers. And I know they come up in forum groups like, oh, RP1, RP, 350 or, whatever other ones. They had the Digitech Genesis at one point, and then they had the GNX line. And like, I know people use those multi-effects, and I know there's at least one guy that's listened to the podcast in the past who's like a big fan of the GNX line, but like most of what they put out in those products sucked. They were awful. I
Yeah.
remember one Christmas, I begged my mom for an RP 250, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
No, it wasn't 250. I think it was the 350. Big guy, silver, 3-foot switches, amp. I had an amp foot switch, like a modulation foot switch, and something else. And I just remember being like, "Oh, it's got built-in rhythms. This is going to be cool." And I just remember getting it and being like, "Wow, every single model in here sounds identical, and that means they sound like shit." I tracked stuff for a band with that thing. It was an RP 300, by the way. It's 300A, I think. And I just remember being like, that was what I thought Digitech did. You know what I mean? Like big multi-effects units. And like, I had no
Well,
idea they were
yeah.
involved in DoD. I had no idea that they had like a line of.
The what was it? The RP 250 Was it the RP? No, RP8. Was it single number? They had. I had a friend of mine who had the RP. It was not huge. It was the smaller one.
Yeah.
It was like a 2 button with a expression pedal. Um, and let me tell you something. That thing was um, great. And he would just plug it into a little Fender's Blues Junior. We're talking about 20 years ago, and the Blues Junior was from like the mid '90s or mid to late '90s, and he had that RP, whatever it was, and it was a great little pedal. The one I'm remembering, the DoD 250 was that little. It was like a yellow overdrive
Yeah, they
pedal,
had a yellow one, but the gray box is the original.
and they had the gray box. That's the one that. Yep. And then the rubberneck was the other one that I liked.
Their analog delay. Well, so they did I think DoD had an analog delay in like the grunge style enclosures as well, and they had a chorus that's really well thought of, and
Yep.
a flanger that people like too. And I agree, the flanger from that line was pretty cool. The problem with those the grunge style enclosures was they were built like shit. So I kind of like, if you're gonna reissue them, put them in a better enclosure, or fix the foot switch at least. Because they actually I believe they brought those pedals back in the original enclosures, which I know for the look and feel that's great, but like, I always felt that like they could have done a much better job by coming up with something a little bit more interesting than those enclosures.
Yeah, I had the DoD overdrive that was yellow, that was like a button instead of like a
back when they were like the MXR enclosures with a standard foot switch. Yeah, it's a DoD 250.
Yep.
The preamp 250 is what they called it.
Yeah, the preamp 250, which is pretty much what we have in the other one, right? No, is it the same 250 that's in the
it is the same
cycle hum one?
Yeah, I think the one that's in the
which is probably why
I think the one in the 5050 is a gray box though. I think it's based on the gray box circuit.
Right, which is why I like it.
So there's a little bit of a contention about whether the yellow and the gray box are different. And I guess there was a time period when they were the same. So, I think the current reissue 250 was not the same as the originals. And Analog Man was modifying them for a while. You could get the current one and have him modify it.
There it is. That damn Digitech or DoD Digitech, whatever pedal.
Yeah, so I mean, I think they have stuff. I think they have stuff in their catalog they could bring back. Do you know why I think Digitech actually went under? I think they made a lot of bad mistakes. And one thing, like, so they got acquired by Samsung, right? But like Samsung didn't kill JBL. In fact, they actually kind of strengthened JBL a little bit, which is why I'm like, I think what actually wound up happening was DoD had like, and Digitech, by virtue, because they were the same company, had bad, like they had like a bad run of products. Okay. And they did have a bad run of products. They had the hardware series. And before that, they had digital distortions and stuff, which because for a while they killed off DoD. And I think that was a really, really bad track for them to be on. But like, I think the digital modeler thing, they couldn't compete with Line 6.
No.
And they struggled to keep up. And I think that was a big part of their demise. But the other thing we've talked about on the show is they had the Jam Man line, which was their competitor for Boss, right? For the Boss Looper. And they like made that thing as proprietary as they possibly could. And to the point where they actually bastardized MIDI. And actually, like we talked about on the show, they stripped out commands that just should have worked. Because they didn't want you to be able to communicate to it with MIDI. And then they had the Trio, which was a great product idea. And it should have been expandable, number one. And I think they always intended to do like a Trio part version 2, which was going to be expandable. But then they gave it Jam Sync instead of MIDI. So it was like, this is a waste of time. You can't trigger this with anything else. So you can't use it as a fill-in drummer. I had a trio for a while, and I thought it was just kind of a joke, and I have the Beat Buddy now, and I think that's fantastic. It doesn't play bass
Yep.
for me, but I
Right.
mean, I'll have to live with that. So I don't know. This is all food for thought. Like, if you're wondering why we're having a conversation about a company like Digitech, like, they've got a long history of a lot of different stuff. And I'm sure there's something in their catalog that would be of interest to you. Now,
Oh yeah.
would you have to mod this pedal to be permanently on and then use a loop switcher to engage it? Potentially, because their enclosures are not known for being super solid.
Yep.
But if you can do that, I mean, you can get around it. They had a great compressor too. I forget which one it was, but it was like a Ross compressor, and a lot of people like that too. So I don't know. I'm just like, I'm not upset. I like that they're gone because I think they've got enough proprietary stuff in their past. Somebody's going to buy them and be like, you know what? We want to keep doing the rubber neck. We want to make a 250. We want to make, and it may not even be a guitar company, Jim. Like, we're thinking about this from the perspective of like, Line 6 might buy them, but there are other companies that would love to have the intellectual property too, like Earthquaker Devices. Some of these pedal companies that have become mainline pedal companies would love to acquire a brand like that.
Do you remember when I bought the Bigsby pedal?
Yeah.
And you said, yeah, Jim, that's a whammy. That's a Digitech whammy.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, it's not. It kind of is. But what's funny, so let me grab it real quick.
I actually think for somebody who wants a whammy replacement, like an actual replacement device for a whammy, like an actual physical whammy bar on a guitar, that's perfect. I mean, that thing really does. And I saw Josh Smith was on Instagram today playing one. And I'm like, dude, that thing's legit. Like, I like that.
There's a gal that plays cello or something. No, she plays.
Is it the lady who did the Wonder Woman theme?
Yeah.
Yeah, I forget her name offhand, but she plays. She's a Helix that she plugs her cello into, and she's also using that now.
She has one, and there's a gal also that plays the what do you call that thing? The harp, not this harp, the harp.
Yeah, actual harp.
And she got one of these and was using it, and she loves it. And of course, she got her name on there because they put her name on there. But
yeah,
but I'm just saying that this thing is built like a tank. I mean, solid construction. Great idea. The look. I mean, they went through the trouble of paying Fender, because Fender owns that name, paying Fender to put this design on there, and not even bothering to make any changes. And you can see it looks great.
Yeah, they do on the name post 2019. So if anybody wants to know when the acquisition happened, and they acquired it from, do you know?
No. Who?
Gretsch.
That makes sense.
Common misconception. Fender does not own Gretsch.
Okay. And this came with, no, they do not. And it came with the thing so I can do MIDI to it.
Yeah.
So, is it expensive? Yes, it's about double what you just paid. Not quite, but close. But you get it. It comes from Latvia, which is north of Poland, but great pedal if you're looking for something that does the whammy thing very well, and you can also adjust all the rate and blend and all the other stuff. So yeah.
They have some other cool pedals too. They have the plus the plus pedal, which is cool. Yeah.
I might actually already have the pitch. You might be right. That does detune. I'll have to reread the thing. I might actually already have detune in here where I can hit it and it goes, and hit it and it comes back.
Yeah, so
I already have it in there. Shit. That's all right. I could sell it for more than I paid for it.
I would keep it. I think actually might even be it might even sound better. But there is no final price on the Bigsby pedal yet. Believe it or not. the price you paid may not be the final price because they
they're not selling it to the public yet.
No, they're not. And I have a feeling that you guys paid for the development cost. So
yeah,
I have a feeling when it
and
hits,
I paid that money up front like months. Remember, I was like several months.
Given the pricing of their other pedals, I think it'll be around $375, maybe 400 even. I don't think it's going to be much more than that, because their other pedals are right around that price.
How much?
Around $375 to $400.
Yeah, I mean that's what I paid, $400.
So the plasma coil is $350, the plasma pedal is $300, the plasma drive is $369. This obviously and then of course the plus pedal is $379, light pedal is $379. I think this pedal is going to be $400 because of the Bigsby.
Because of Bigsby, and they got to pay Fender a licensing fee.
Well,
and they say right out there that they pay.
I wonder if they're paying Fender a licensing fee or Fender actually is pocketing some of the money for the pedal itself.
Might be
that they may have partnered up together, and because they have their own, and maybe Game Changer is doing some development work for Fender's pedals, which would not shock me because there's been a lot of rumors going around about who is actually designing Fender's pedals. Somebody like Game Changer seems like they would be right up Fender's alley for that kind of thing. So
yeah,
nothing Game Changers themselves sells is like a normal pedal. They're freaking weird stuff. So,
Yep. Anybody interested in getting one, let me know.
All right.
I have a
yeah, you have one.
I have a link if you want to get one. No, I'm not selling.
Yeah, I mean,
I have a link.
We might talk after the show. I'd be interested just to know what they're costing and stuff because I know if you have a link, you probably know what they cost.
Yep.
So let's switch over to Gig Report. We've done Digitech to death. I don't know if you have a Gig Report. Do you, Jim?
Yep.
Okay.
Quick one.
All right. You do yours first since it's quick.
Yep. So went to we had a gig locally, and let's just say female anatomy was visible from right away. It was it was one of those gigs that started out at the top and started going. We started going at 8:30 p.m. and we had that stuff going on before 9 o'clock.
So basically, a lot of alcohol at this gig.
There was a lot of alcohol. There was a lot of drinking. A lot of people having a lot of fun. And it went well. Sound was good. My friend had to come in and sit as the second guitar player because Joe couldn't make it for some personal reasons. And so it was one of those things that the most embarrassing part of it was there was a couple of times where I'll give you a prime example. There was a couple of songs where I was like, oh shit, I gotta intro that song. I don't know how, but I just pulled it out of my ass, right? The one song I couldn't pull out of my ass was Wagon Wheel. I did not know how to play Wagon Wheel.
Just guess. It's not that tough a song, and it kind of sucks.
It sucks so hard.
I have
never actually listened to it.
Wagon Wheel tidbit, just for a second. We have a club here. We have a club here in the city that actually has a sign on the wall that says "No Wagon Wheel." And
that's funny. That's funny.
Okay, so one of the bands I play with, they've paid to play Wagon Wheel. You have to pay like $25. Yeah, so
that's funny. That I feel like we should have a tip jar up front. It says Wagon Wheel.
Yeah.
Wagon Wheel, Brown Eyed Girl, Margaritaville, Mustang Sally, $25.
Those are 5 songs that you can just burn. Like I just don't care about any of them. Actually, Mustang Sally, I know people like want to hear that one, but in my age group, that's like a rarely heard song. So I'm not as like pushy about that one, but the rest of those tunes, fuck them. Like that's how I feel about it.
And we have Brown Eyed Girl in the set list.
I hate that song, and I have to play it, and they're like, "Do the intro." I'm like, "Yeah, no."
I don't. Okay, I got a curiosity question for you. So playing the intro because you're covering the intro just like I am.
Yeah.
To Brown Eyed Girl. Do you do it? Do you do double stops on adjacent strings or do you skip string?
I'm doing adjacent on that just so I can keep it straight in my head.
I
Um,
play it on strings that are not adjacent. I play it on the
there are
B
other
and the
ways.
D
Yeah, I mean,
strings.
there's certainly other ways to play it, and I don't
Oh
think it
yeah,
was play. I don't think it was played adjacent on the record for sure.
yeah. I have no idea.
But I have a feeling that there may have actually been tuning trickery on the record too,
That's what I'm thinking
where
because that's hard to do. It's harder than you think.
yeah, well, it's
I
not
mean, it's
actually
not
that hard for me to do it, but
super
the problem is there's too many shifts because
right.
you're playing diatonic harmony basically, and you've
Yep,
got like these big jumps, and if you
yep.
don't have that like nailed when you
And
go to
it's
do it
got it.
live, yeah, it's fast too, it can cause problems. So anyway,
You can sit and practice that slow, and it can be easy.
it's
But you
not.
do that to speed, and you do that without making a mistake and
I
without
don't,
having a single thing.
Jim. Here's one thing that's going to blow your mind. I don't practice it. So when they ask me to do it, I pull it out and I do it. But it's
Oh
like
yeah,
I
same
hate
here.
it. I hate it. I don't want to play it because there's too much room for error.
It's the Margaritaville intro backwards.
Yeah, I
If you
guess it
look at
is.
it,
I guess it
it's the
is.
Margaritaville one backwards. I was playing
I
Margaritaville.
guess
I
it
go,
is.
oh my god, that's Margaritaville backwards.
I
I mean,
don't
not
do the Margaritaville
exactly, but
intro anyway. We play like punk rock Margaritaville because
oh, that's cool.
I'm not doing that.
Hey,
Well, not like that, but I mean like
Margaritaville.
think more like pop punk, like
Oh,
because they get going real fast and it's kind of like bluegrassy. So like when you get going fast and then you got me doing triplets on guitar, like it starts sounding like punk rock. There's nothing you can do about it.
so prepping for my next gig, I want to show you some notes. This is some prepping for my next gig.
It's not really triplets, by the way. It's triple feel. Anyway, yep.
Yeah. Yep. And so we're writing harmony parts. So the solo for another song that you probably hate, and I don't hate it, but I don't love it, is Friends in Low Places.
I mean, I
And
don't hate that one, but it's
yeah.
not a
And
song I
so
would play.
right. Well, we do a country thing, and so
I know somebody
these
who's
are
played that
notes.
one.
Yeah. So these are notes for
Yeah,
Friends in Low Places, right? Because it's in A major, right?
right.
And so that I'm writing out the riff. There's a riff in there.
Yeah.
We're harmonizing. So this is the notes in the riff, and these are the chords of A. I said, okay, I got to take these notes, turn them into double stops to create a riff, and that's what we were working on, so that we could do that. Da, da, no, 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 no. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm doing okay. If I play it, what's it going to be? Am I going to play it thirds? I'm going to play it fifths. I'm going to play, and it's going to be perfect fits. And it's going to be perfect fits to the notes or perfect fits to the chords. It should be
Yeah.
perfect fits to the chords. And what's funny is the part we're playing it over is that freaking B flat diminished chord. So it's like, woo!
Yeah.
Oh,
I can't even picture what's going on there. So
which is also G sharp diminished. So yeah, it's fun. All right. So anyway, you're up.
what was that?
The G sharp diminished.
Oh,
We're playing it over a B flat diminished though, because it's the chord
doesn't
that kind
matter because it's as long as it's 4 notes higher. So
exactly.
I don't know what the interval that is, but it's a
Yep.
tritone, right?
Yep.
Or some other tritone relationship. It could be a tritone lower as well.
So we're playing so next weekend I'll have a gig report that's
that'll be interesting.
we're playing in the Outer Banks of North Carolina, and we're doing a tattoo parlor during a bike week while they're doing bikini contests day 1 and day 2.
Yeah, I think you had told me that you were doing that gig. Yeah, all right. That'll be an interesting gig report.
Yep.
I might have to censor Jim a little bit during that one.
Yeah. No, you won't have to censor me. I don't. Just like this one, I didn't.
You said enough. You said enough. I was borderline on this one. I almost had to play Facebook for a minute. I knew I was gonna get you on that one.
Facebook loves me.
All right.
Go Elon.
Yeah.
Okay,
he's not buying Facebook.
No, but he's buying their buddy company.
Yeah, most likely. I would think at this point.
Is it Instagram and Facebook, or is it
Instagram
Twitter?
and It's Instagram and Facebook.
Okay,
Twitter is a
Instagram.
rival. Yeah.
See, I don't even have Instagram. I don't even.
All right. So gig report, my gig report, which is actually going to include a lot of other philosophical crap. So I went to Went to Open Jam this week, which it was this week, right? Thursday. So I got sick again, right? Like, which is why we didn't have an episode last week. And then like I forgot Open Jam, and like it's Wednesday. I was like, oh man, I feel like crap, or I was still feeling kind of like crap. But then like Thursday rolled around, it's like, oh, you going to Open Jam? Yeah,
Right.
I was already starting to feel better, so I'm like, yeah. I got sick on
Yeah.
Sunday, and so like I was already sort of feeling better, and so I was like, all right, fine. And I took it's a good night. Okay, awful shit was happening to me. That day was really hard for me for personal reasons, and I ended up on stage with Mike Mara that night, and he was there, and like he doesn't always come out, so it's kind of cool. And I don't know, before that happened, like I got really bad news before I went on stage, about 20 minutes before. And so like, I was just in this weird place, right? And like, I played really well, but I guess, I don't know. I can't even comment on that because I don't keep a camera on stage with me to like know what I did.
Right.
Which that's something that's also got to change. So I was there, I did my thing, and then like we did want to talk a little bit about gear. I had the amp one, and I had my guitar, the amp one, and my Lone Star cab that's actually up top over there with the creamback in it. And I gotta be real for a minute. Nobody was in front of me this time. Nobody had put their cab in front of mine. And actually, for a portion of it, Mike had his Fillmore on top of my cabinet. And it just, I mean, that thing smoked. Now, I didn't have it adjusted properly. I could use some more treble. I could have tailored the mid-range a little bit better. But I was like, I hit the drive switch, and it was like, let's go.
Yep.
And it was a comfort thing on stage, right? Like it felt really good, and I'm not going to complain. So I got off stage, and of course people were talking about like how good I played and how great it sounded and whatever. And it's like I try to take those compliments as best I can, and so apologies if I make it seem like I'm like, yeah, you're full of shit.
Right.
But a lot of
I do the
time, a
same
lot of
thing.
times I do feel that way. But like I'm trying to be more receptive to that. But I was just sitting there, and like I was dealing with this bad news, and I'm like, I was surrounded by a lot of cool people. A lot of people were like concerned about my situation, and I was okay, right? Best way I can describe it. I was okay. So I knew Cooley Underground was happening this weekend, or last weekend. Yeah, so this is the Thursday before last, I think. Yeah, that sounds right. Not this weekend. And so I did Cooley, and I was told to come early because Ryan, who runs it, was there, and so Cooley Underground, Jim, if you remember, is the like chill spot in somebody's basement where they do live broadcasting. And so I got invited, and I've been there before. Like it was an open jam, so everybody was invited anyway. But I got there early because I was told come early. We never have people early. It's a lot easier to get playtime if you come early. And you just want to come in and like hang out and play with people. I'm like, this is a social thing for me. So like whatever. So I came out early, and I walked in. It was like 4:30, and there were people downstairs playing, and I played a little bit with them, and then like
Yep.
we went upstairs, and there was pieces being cooked and just shooting the shit with people, and then we went back downstairs, and I was playing through one of the gentlemen, and I won't say his name because I don't know if he wants it on the podcast or not, but one of the gentlemen's rig, and it was like a Mesa Express. I think it was a 550. I'm pretty sure it was a 550. And he had a pedal board which had like 3 tube screamers on it, different varieties. And then like, I don't know, I wasn't really paying too much attention. Like I paid attention to the dirt pedals first. There was a TS-808 Mini. There was the Keeley, the red tube screamer variant. I forget what it's called. And then there was an OCD. And I don't care to own an OCD anymore, especially hearing it at gig volume.
Yeah, I don't.
Very hit or miss on that.
Just like some people like and dislike badly the TS9, I don't get the OCD at all.
Well, it's funny because when you're playing through somebody else's rig, right, which is exactly the situation I was in.
Yep.
There's a lot of compression going. I think he had compression going like in the effects loop of the amp, and I think he had compression going before the amp, and then so it's like he's a clean player. The guy likes to have really clean, sustainy, almost like having an overdrive on, but it's a clean sound sort of sound. And for me, I was like playing this, and I'm like, this really isn't my thing. And I just got this feeling that my sound was very dry. Of course, we're playing so damn loud, and we're in this tiny room, so I really couldn't tell what was going on. I had my plugs in because it was so brutally loud. And I just remember like getting through and kind of being like, well, we played. And we play. Mike actually came out to that too, and then we played Born Under a Bad Sign. We played Watchtower, which I just totally wrecked. It was like, because I'm just tired at that point. Like I played the other night, and I didn't sleep very good the night before, and like it was the whole thing. But I had a good time, right? And it was great. And I sat and visited with people, and then we left. And then the next day, I saw the performance. And I almost reached out to the guys. I was like, "Can we take this down?" Like this was just bad from me specifically. Mike was okay, but like even Mike, we were talking on the side, and he's like, I don't know that I sounded that great either. And I'm like, dude, I'm not gonna say one way or the other because that's your position to judge yourself. But I'm kind of like, I was not happy. Like I had a good time, but that's about the best I can say there. And I sort of realized it led me down this path. And that's really what I want to talk about, this path, right? For 3 days, I have laid awake at night thinking about. I talked about the Great Pedal Purge of 2016, where I sold, I think, $1,000 worth of pedals, and then started over, and I bought. I went to Chicago Music Exchange, and I spent $600 on pedals in one day.
Oh, jeepers!
And I
remember that.
Still have one of those pedals. That was before the show started, I think. But it was like, I think we talked about it on the show because it was like,
right.
This is a big turning point in my life, right?
Because I remember when you went from having all these pedals to just going to the.
That was right around the show,
the
time the show started, right?
Right, and then you went back, just like I have.
Yeah, so maybe
I kind of use both. I have the Kemper and I have the pedals.
The pedal purge of like 2015, 2014, because it was a while ago. I'd been working where I'm at now. I'm there. This is my 8th year, so, and it would have been the year I started there, so it would have been about 8 years ago. But anyway, when that has all happened, like. I had been the guy that was like, I'm not spending money on gear and all this stuff and like trying not to spend anything. And then all of a sudden I just went, you know what? Let's open the taps. And part of it was new employment, actually having some money, because I went from making about $25,000 a year to making a significant amount of money. I was paying my dues. So all that said and done, right? Like I start buying up gear and all this, and like now here I am. We've been through how many board revisions? I think 4, where like 4 periods where I was just buying pedals right and left, maybe 5. And I've had the Helix, I've had the Kemper, I've had several amps in this time period. I had several, probably 7 or 8 amps in this time period. And a lot of the things that I still have, I've had during this time period, I've had for quite some time. Like the Mark 525 that's behind those pedals up there, and then some of my cabs, and actually I think I ditched all my original Mesa cabs, and then I went to the Lone Stars. But point is, like I've been developing my taste, and I knew even when I dumped all my stuff, and then I started acquiring stuff back in like 2015 or whatever it was. I knew that like I had come up with this idea with slots, right? I knew the players I liked. And at that time it was Philip Sayce was a big influence on the way I thought about gear, and Stevie Ray Vaughan was a big influence on the way I thought about gear. And actually, I know this will probably shock at least one listener. Jeff Beck was a big thing about how I thought about gear because his approach was like so minimalist. But also Robin Trower, who is still a big influence on the way I think about gear. And it's like looking at their pedal boards and stuff, and just, well, Trower doesn't play with pedal board actually, but looking at their pedals and thinking about like, all of these guys use a fuzz, they got a drive, they got, or they got a fuzz or a drive, or a fuzz and a drive, depending on who they are. They have a univibe. They have some sort of effect providing reverb for them. Most of them have a delay. In some cases, it's an echoplex. I think also Eric Johnson's another one I left out of that list. But there's not a lot of modulation going on, except for Eric Johnson, of course. There's not a lot of, you might get a chorus on the odd song here or there or something like that, but for the most part, it's just me like thinking about, really I can do everything I do with like 4 pedals. And this culminated in like, I got the amp 1 and I finally had drive sounds where I was like, that's exactly the sound that's been in my head. This like Marshall thing that I have never been able to get from an actual Marshall. I've owned actual Marshalls, and I've never felt like, now granted the ones I had were not like real Marshalls. I didn't have like 50 watt small box heads or anything like that. I had,
Right.
I had the DSL 5C, which is the same preamp as the, DSL 40 or whatever. And I had the Class 5, okay? Vintage style Marshall, small wattage, not really the real deal kind of thing. And then the 5C, which is like the same sort of thing, but, more modern. And I'm looking to see, yeah, I got it back here. So, in thinking about this whole process and like putting together a board that goes along with the amp 1, because I need even less with the amp 1, because now it's like, how many drive pedals do you need? Like, well, I mean, I got clean, I got a rhythm sound, and I just need something to push that rhythm sound over the cliff, right?
Right.
So this is what I ended up settling on. And I know it's hilarious because I'm going to talk about the pedals that I have here. So there's a Vibe Machine, the King of Tone, the Delay Llama XL, and then the Mercury 7 from Maris, which is a reverb. And I just want to talk about like how that happened and why those pedals and how I'm using them, because there's some revelations in there that have happened like literally in the last week. Even though I've been collecting Univibes and been playing Univibes for years, there's things I'm learning that I just didn't know. So delay wise, like the first challenge I had, I know I was going 4 cable, right? Delay and reverb got to go in the loop of the amp 1. So that's fine. I get my cables out and I hook it up. And I play and I'm like, what the hell? Where's all my treble? The amp 1's pretty bright anyway, especially at home volume. And so like I start screwing around with it and I'm like, what the hell? And I turn the delay on, all my treble disappears. Turn the delay off, all my treble comes back. Reverb doesn't care. Reverb just works fine. So I'm like, what the hell? There's obviously some sort of impedance problem here. So I flipped the amp 1 over, and Jim, if you recall, it has an impedance switch on the bottom of it, which is really interesting because you can touch the impedance switch with a 1/4-inch plug. So you stick that bad boy in there, and then you can swap it back and forth, which is actually a really, really good engineering decision because you never know when the hell you're going to need to touch that thing. And if you're a guitar player, you're always going to have a 1/4-inch plug around. So I hit the switch, and I was like, the voice of, the heavens parted and the voice of the gods came out. Because it's like, there we go. Like, sounds great. That's exactly what I wanted. So I don't know whether it operates better at line level or at instrument level. I'm not asking the question, but I can tell you right now, hitting that switch made a difference for me. And so your mileage may vary if you're trying to do this stuff yourself. Which also leads me to wonder if I put the HX Stomp in the loop, that's going to have an effect on it. And I have a feeling the answer to that question is yes. So that's one thing, right? Now here is the other piece of the puzzle. I was listening to a lot of Robin Trower. We played, actually at the jam, we played, Two Rolling Stoned. Okay. And it was funny because they ended up playing it twice because they played it before I got there. And I was like, you guys know any Robin Trower? And the guy's like, yeah, dude, we just played 2 Rolling Stone. And they all started laughing. I was like, God damn it. Why wouldn't you play that with me? And so after we went upstairs and had they cooked pizza, then we went back downstairs and they were like, all right, let's play 2 Rolling Stone. I'm like, okay, let's go. So I get to play that for the first time with like a group of people that actually knew the tune, which was like fantabulous. Now, granted, I sucked it really bad, but still being able to play like those, because I know the songs pretty well, like that was great. I really enjoyed it. I even got to do some of the lead parts, the famous lead parts of that tune. But so I didn't have a Univibe when I played it, which was like sacrilege, right? Whoops. Somebody should be coming after me with pitchforks for playing Robin Trower stuff without a Univibe. And I had my board with me, this board, but instead of that, the Vibe machine, I had the Unicorn on there. So when I left, of course, first thing I did was I got in the car, was put on some Robin Trower, and I was listening to Rolling Stone actually, and I was listening to it, and I'm going, damn it, like there's something missing. And it wasn't just the rig I was playing through, because the rig I was playing through was obviously inadequate anyway for what I try to do, right?
Right.
You know, in his hands, I'm sure it's great. But I was like, got home, and then I plugged in the amp 1 the next day, and I was like, we're gonna get this sound, because I know I can do it with the amp 1. It's a Plexina box, right? So I sit down and I start farting around with it, and I start just trying different shit. And one of the things that occurs to me a couple of days into this process, the Unicorn, right, is obviously a high impedance pedal, and it's got a lot of treble, and it's like not high impedance pedal, but a pedal that's like more modern impedance. So I'm like, what the hell? So I pull it off the board, and I'm like, you know what, the Vibe machine, which is on my other board, like I got to try this. So I put it on this one, and like I thought to myself, well, how do I simulate? Because the original Univibes had a cancel switch, which was not true bypass. So you always had, and we've talked about this on the show, and it's like something in the back of my mind is going, you know what? These guys that are all after this shit know this. And there's something to this, because there's still people producing that circuit that way.
Right.
So I'm like, all right, we got to try this, because I've never done it before. And I devised a way, because I don't have an expression pedal. So remember I told you I was going to do an expression pedal? I don't have an expression pedal, so I couldn't do the manual way of doing it that the Vibe machine allows you to. So apparently if you heal up or you heal down on your expression pedal, it'll actually put the pedal in cancel mode. And if you put the pedal in cancel mode, then it's the equivalent of having like an old Univibe, because it won't turn off. It'll just go into cancel mode. So your signal's still routed through like the gain stage that's in the pedal. And I realized, oh shit. I'll bet you I can simulate basically the same thing by just taking the intensity knob and turning it to 0. Intensity is 0. I'm like, there it is. Like, that's the frequency curve that I've been hearing all these years, that I'm like, what the hell? Why can't I do that? And I always thought it was something in the recording chain. I thought it was an EQ or something, but I'm realizing it's not just an EQ. Like, there's more to it than that. And it was just the way that he put it on the middle pickup, you know, and like it would just take off some of that top end. And of course I would manipulate my treble control, and I would get it closer, and all of a sudden it was like, that's it. That's what he's doing. I can't nail the sound identically, but like I know that's what's going on there. That's at least one of the other components that I'm missing. It was like a big eureka moment for me, because that's the sound I've been chasing like pretty much my entire playing career. And then all of a sudden I was like, well, I got to get an expression pedal, and then I got to mount this on a board, and it's got to be like, all these things started falling into place. I'm like, all right, so these 4 pedals plus an expression pedal plus an extra one. And I'd already sort of started thinking about like, I'm going to do this on a MIDI control board so I can control the amp 1 and get the power soak and all this stuff. And this morning I just said, you know, fuck it. Like what we're going to do is we're going to take the MIDI board we have now, we're going to dismantle it. And we're going to have the 4 vintage style pedals that I already have. So like what you see is what you get on the face of them. Dual drive, right? So the King of Tone is going to be there. And we're just going to and we're actually, the one thing I'm adding is a fuzz. And that's going to be the board. And that's just going to be it. And I already have all of the stuff I need except for the expression pedals. And there's going to be 2 of them, because I'm also going to run a volume pedal in the loop. First time I've ever had to do it. I've just been noticing more and more, and I've been thinking about this for a long time, is like when I go to a gig and I'm like, or not gig, but like a jam, and like Volume Police shows up, and not to, piss on anybody who's at my gigs, but, or the jams, but like, so it's turn your guitar down, and I turn it down, and then what happens? We go to play, and all of a sudden the drummer's way louder than me, and like I have to go back to my amp and turn it up, and then I'm never sure what to turn it up at because nobody's there to tell me like turn it up, or like good. So now I have the volume pedal, and I can just rock it on the floor, and if somebody tells me to turn it back, then I can, it's the easy adjustment. So we're gonna do that, and then the other expression pedal is gonna be for the vibe, which that vibe pedal is nuts. I started to adjust it because I was like, well, wait a minute. Now that I know this, like, what is the, because there's like five parameters that are like, what do they call them? They're like dips, not dip switches. They're like trim pots on the side of the pedal, hole into the pedal, trim pot, right? So I started adjusting the trim pots, and like, I realized, oh my God, whoever owned this thing before, he told me he didn't adjust it. Bullshit. Because they like, he was way off base on certain things. And even the manual said like at least one of the parameters that it's like, don't go beyond this point or whatever, like this gets zany, and it was over in that area. And I'm like, oh my God, dude, like, what were you doing? So I put everything back to basically as close as I could get to stock, at least to my ears, close as I could get to a real Univibe. And then, like, now it's way better than it was before. Like, it sounds accurate. And I've been shitting on this pedal for 6 months because I'm like, you know what? The Unicorn is just easier. Like, I don't have to fight it. But like this thing, I feel like now that I got it dialed in, I mean, it's like night and day. But all of those things are just little pieces of the puzzle to make me realize what I was saying when I'm losing sleep over the fact that, dude, I've spent so much money on gear that I don't need. Like things that are sitting on my shelf right now that I'm like, and some of them I can't part with, right? So there are some things that like now I have an attachment to. The BB preamp's not going anywhere, but like, I'll be honest with you, both of the what are they? Jackson audio pedals, they're probably gone. I just don't need them. I am actually probably going to build a second King of Tone, and I'm going to build one because you can't buy one, and I'm going to build one because I'm going to have a second board, which is just with like the HX Stomp, the King of Tone, the Unicorn, and something else, and that's going to be for like using with my amps, so that everything with the amp one is mounted on a board, and then everything will be secondary will be on another board, and I'm not going to mess with them, and it's just like leave it. Like, I don't really need anything else. Even like I usually tell myself, like, different guitars, well, you're going to need a different fuzz or something, and it's like, really, at some point it's like, dude, you got to stop like lying to yourself and just figure out the right settings and just stop worrying about it. And I'm trying to get more back to basics. I'm making a very, very concerned effort. The other thing is, as we're ending the show right now, because I know we're way over, but and I know you want to get to bed. The last thing is, I am going to acquire a Boss RC600. I bought the RC500 while we were doing the podcast about a year ago or 2 years ago during COVID because I was doing live streaming. I became an affiliate on Twitch this week, and so that means I can accept tips. That means I can now start to offer better interactivity for people who are watching the stream, which I have some ideas of how we're going to encourage that. I have ideas. I'm not everything is together yet, but I have ideas, and I've got a lot of work to do to get that going in the middle of recording a record, right? It's like, this is the worst time for me to be doing like 3 different things at once, but that's literally what I'm going to do for the next like 6 months. And I know that the RC500 had a few features that I I needed a few more features. It doesn't have enough foot switches. Boss, if you think a 3-button foot switch pedal is adequate for a 2-channel looper with like 50 effects and all these different things in it, you're fucking nuts. I'm here to tell you, that's wrong. Like, the 600 has like, it's basically the GT1000, but it's just a looper, right? And it has MIDI and it has stereo ins and outs, and I think you can take 2 instruments in, 3 instruments in, and it's like, this is what I really need. So we're gonna do that, and that's gonna go on another board, and the WH5 is gonna fit into this by being on that board because I'm gonna use it for bass down, so like octave down, and then the Beat Buddy will go on that board, and all this stuff will drive the stream. So with the things I sell, I sort of know where I'm headed, but it's like, it's a lot of commitment to new stuff. Also, my guitar is being finished. So like, I know that's a big part of this too. The new Strats coming in. And so hopefully next podcast, I'll have more details on that, but
cool.
Yeah. So I think that's enough. I think we've covered a lot tonight, and I think we'll probably talk more about my journey, because I'm sure that I'm going to be continuing on it, but it is gig based for a change. Like, it's actual realizations I'm having from playing with other people. Is like, I just don't use all this shit. Like, I could have like 20 pedals on the floor, and if I only use 4 of them, what the hell difference does it make?
Yep.
So, and Jim, you've talked about that too. You got boards with stuff on them that you don't use. It's like, well, what do I have this for? I turn on that chorus for that one song, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry. I'm going to end the show. I've been David.
I've been Jim.
And tonight we've been Practical Guitarists.
All righty.